I'm Jack.
And I'm Brenden.
And we're coming to you from Beyond the Terrarium,
where DIY meets naturalistic reptile keeping.
Enjoy. All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to episode number 11 of Beyond the Terrarium. We hit double digits last week, and now all numbers have gone out the window, and I have no idea where we're at. I was making the stream for this one, and I was like, are we really on 11? I had to go back and check. So, but yeah, welcome back. I'm your host, Jack Oliver, with my co-host here, Brenden. Brenden, before we get into, all the good stuff that we're going to talk about here, as always, we got to talk cat gecko eggs. Where are we at? They haven't hatched yet.
At the spot we were last week, and the week before that, and the week before that, and the week before that.
Okay, no updates.
No, they're doing good, man. They're chilling.
Okay.
We're at let's see, April. So we're at 70 days, roughly. I think
about time.
So the people who told me it takes 60 days lied.
Yeah.
So definitely.
Well, I think you have to cut them, man.
Yeah, right.
And pull them out. Yeah,
I gotta cut the whole tops of them off and make sure, stick my finger in there and
swirl them around a bit. I think that's required in nature for them to hatch.
I'm hoping 90 days, man, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And then the female, she's looking thick again, so we'll see, man. Fingers crossed. Yeah. The whole thing's been a roller coaster, as everybody knows. So.
It's all been good, though. I get excited hearing about it every week, even though there's no change. So,
dude, I wake up in the morning, and before I even do anything, I'm running down to the gecko room and peeking at them, like, are you hatched yet? Still haven't hatched. So.
Well, we'll get a live update when they do hatch. We'll go live and we'll stream it, maybe.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm down. I'll do it. Everybody can see me cry, dude. It's fine.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll have a good catch up next week when we do our one-on-ones, but we've got a very exciting guest here today. So I think we'll jump straight into that. So today we're joined by Jack Thomson of GekkotaCulture. Is that how I say it?
Yeah. GekkotaCulture. Yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you. Yeah, no, excited to be here. When I saw the podcast on somebody's story, I forget who, and I was like, oh man, this is for me. Like these are dudes I really like the direction of the pod so far. It's been really fun. It's everything that gets me excited about reptiles kind of wrapped up into one.
That's awesome.
Nice, man.
Yeah, that's the same for us. That's why we started the podcast, man. This is our favorite thing about it is kind of setting up these habitats and these little slices of nature that we do. So stoked to have you on. Actually, we've had a couple of people recommend that we get you on here.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time coming. And
hell yeah.
yeah. Everyone's like, have you talked to Jack yet?
Tommy. No, I know Tommy would shout me out, but I'm curious who else.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah, after. But yeah, so super stoked about this. I think if we want to get started on this, we try to stay away from the general, how'd you get into reptiles? But I think you've got such a broad stroke that we can't, put it down into a singular thing. So how'd you get to where you are now? Kind of give us an overlay of your collection, what you do, sneak peek. He works at Zoom Ed, so we'll talk about that. But how'd you get to where the position you're at now in the reptile world?
Yeah. I can kind of go down the timeline there. So, kind of started out just like anybody else in the reptile game. You got your, it's like a, Steve Harvey. What's his show called? Forgot.
I almost said Cheaper by the Dozen, but that's it.
Cheaper by the Dozen is definitely not
it. Family Feud.
It's like Family Feud. Yeah. It's like Steve Irwin, B, herping, catching lizards as a kid, in diapers, right? And kind of always having a fascination. I grew up in San Jose, so California. So we got a lot of the Western fence lizards and alligator lizards, which I have a newfound appreciation for after getting a brony and talking to some East Coast guys about how jealous they are every time I post a picture of a random alligator lizard I'll find out in the on a wall or something. So, we can talk about that later. But so catching gators, catching western fences, saw a couple kings growing up too, and kind of always had a fascination for reptiles, right? And kind of started building my collection out at home. I think I was 10 when I got my first leopard gecko. So, always been a huge fan of geckos. They've something about their eyes, their structure, like their patterns, like just the whole gecko genre has been what I've been most fascinated in. I think they're super personable. I think they're super unique, and man, what a variety within like a clade, right? So, kind of always stuck with geckos the whole time I was keeping reptiles. So, kind of started in elementary, middle school, had a leopard gecko, kind of built it up from there, got cresteds, and got a couple other your bearded dragon, ball python, that kind of thing. And then I eventually kind of got old enough to get a job, so started working at the reptile store I often got bugs at, and as soon as I got there, then it was on. So that's when I started to get exposure to like a ton of different species. So we had like a bunch of big constrictors, monitors, and like the list of animals that we get in was a pretty nice range, especially from someone who kind of went off like the Petco list of animals. Didn't know too much about like the what else was out there. So that was some good exposure, and I guess the train to where I am now actually started in high school when I was working that job at that pet store. I got the contact information from so first I got into Cal Poly down here in San Luis Obispo, got accepted. And then I talked to my boss, told him, I was heading out for the summer and heading out kind of indefinitely or for the rest of time, because frankly, I didn't really want to go back there. But told him that, and he said, hey, Zuma's headquarters down there. And I got the name and phone number of the sales rep that kind of covered that store's location. Gave him a call, kind of told him who I was, sent my name up the chain of command. Had like an email back and forth a couple times with Ashley, the person that kind of runs the animal room now. And that kind of went nowhere at first. Kind of forgot about it. Got to school, did a year. Ended up having to get rid of a lot of my reptiles going to college. But when I was a freshman in the dorms, I got a little tank of mourning geckos.
Nice.
So that's kind of how because I had to get rid of pretty much everything. So it was almost a complete restart for me, which was nice. I kind of grew up watching like a lot of like the reptile collection tour videos and whatnot. And I honestly think that kind of strayed me the wrong way. And it was more about checking boxes than it was about getting kind of stuff I'm stoked on and doing, good things with them. So it was like a blessing and a curse at the same time. But, I think that had a silver lining, right? So got the mourning geckos freshman year. Second year, still lived on campus, but I had a little more space to work with. So kind of started getting into dart frogs and whatnot, kind of staying within the tropical, I was a big plant nut too. So kind of all works together.
Oh, yes, it does.
Yeah. And then around that same time, second year, I got a job at the local fish and reptile store in the college town. Worked there, and they have a lot closer of a relationship with ZooMed. So a lot of the employees from ZooMed will go in there to buy feeders and stuff, or to come, hang out. So ended up getting, I don't know about notice, but I ended up talking to like a few other employees, and eventually my name kind of got bubbled up when they were looking for more animal care help. So my third year, I got a call and an email. It was like a random number. I was like, who is this? I kind of didn't answer it for the first week or two. And then I was scrolling my emails, and I found an email from like 2 weeks previously about from Ashley at zoomed.com. I was like, oh shit. So
I blew it. I blew
it. But yeah, so yeah, and then finally, kind of got my foot in the door there, came in, and yeah, and it's been enjoying it ever since. It's been an awesome experience. And then kind of simultaneously at home, as I was working at the fish store, it was a lot of like, people would come by and drop their animals off. I guess my resurgence back into geckos was with crested. So a customer had come in with a couple of crested geckos, kind of dropped them off, didn't really want anything to do with them anymore, and then left. So I was all right, what are these things? And I opened the box. I go, oh shit, I close it, and then I put it in my put it with my stuff, and I was like, all right, yeah, these are coming home with me. Yeah, Paul, they were free. So ended up being a lily white in that box. Like a full grown female lily white, which 2 years ago when these things were actually worth some good money. So so I went home, researched them. I had kept cresteds obviously, and I was I always loved them, so I was like, oh yeah, this is sick. I'm gonna get back into crested, so kind of got a couple cresteds now, and from there the leaf tails kind of took over the room at this point. That seems to be where I found my happy place in the reptile game, is with Uroplatus, the leaf tails, the Madagascar leaf tails. So we ended up getting a pair in at the reptile store, and they weren't there that long. Took them home shortly thereafter, and haven't really looked back since. So that's kind of where I am today. The collection is kind of 90% geckos. Kind of I've got I think 4 different species of Uroplatus at this point. So got Sakura, Ebanawi, Lineatus, and then a single Peshmanai. And then for kind of new cows, I got cresteds, gargs, uris, and then I guess the odd duck in the mix is I've got a couple of Bronia too. I've been kind of messing with those in the background, but those have quickly become some of my favorite animals in the room. So that's kind of where I am today.
Yeah,
with everything.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, when we talked to Thomas last week, I was like, dude, I can't look into them too much because it's really going to cost
you're screwed. You're screwed.
Oh, I wanted them before we talked to him, and then we talked to him, and I was like, man.
Yeah. Dude, it's I'm looking at them right now. It's like it's such an unreal species, and it's such a I feel so lucky to be able to own these animals because their future in the hobby is not set in stone. It's very up to the keepers and up to the hobbyists to keep them around. So and man, what an incredible species. I kind of hold them in the same regard that I do the Madagascan leaf tails too. So
it's probably very similar as far as like their status in the hobby. I mean, not a ton of people working with them. So
no, totally. I actually think that Uroplatus are becoming more popular. I think people are starting to realize that it's doable. There's a lot of captive bred animals kind of getting out now, and those animals are honestly hardy as any crested gecko. You just gotta, I feel like the thing that sets them apart and makes them a little bit more challenging is that they're specialists, right? So crested geckos I consider more of a generalist. They can kind of be happy, and if you got leaf litter in the enclosure, great, they'll hide under the leaf litter. If you got a tree hollow, great, they'll hide in the tree hollow. And they're very adaptable. They'll hide in leaves. They'll do whatever, right? So the leaf tails are very different. They're all tuned through evolution to very specific like niches in nature, right? So if we're not providing that specific snapshot, I don't like to generalize. I don't like to I temp gun this animal in the wild at this temp, so it only exists there. But with their habitat, with their enclosures, and kind of like how you set them up, that is something you kind of got to do with leaf tails. Is kind of tend to their specialties, right? So and they all have their own unique kind of quirks and specialties and ways they've evolved, which is I get a huge kick out of that in the natural history.
They're almost kind of like the finches and the Galapagos, where it's like each species just kind of like is filling a different niche or is has evolved differently. Which is super interesting. Now, do you think, and this is not a question we had prepared, but I just thought about it, but like, crested geckos, they've been bred in captivity for, quite a period of time. Do you think that like, as Uroplatus become more readily produced, they'll become more generalized and they'll almost be, I don't want to say domesticated in a way, but like become easier?
I think as the longer we have them in captivity, the more dialed like we become as keepers, and the more we learn, and the more that the correct way of keeping them becomes kind of commonplace, right? So I don't, because they've evolved to such a drastic degree to do like one specific thing. Like
their
whole MO is to not be seen.
Yeah.
The hours of 8 and 6.
Yeah.
And that is at their core, and that is at their core of instinct. That is it's ingrained, and I don't think you could separate that, truthfully.
Yeah.
Nothing from what I've seen with captive bred animals or long-term captives. They all do the same thing that they're supposed to do, and they're incredible at it. But I don't want to make it seem like they're always hiding, though. They're always in plain sight. They're never kind of under leaf litter, out of sight. Like, you can always find them without having to go in there and dig around, which is a huge plus for me. Like, I want to be able to see them. So
the complete opposite of a cat gecko, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I have a room full of empty cage syndrome between like daylight, and then as soon as those lights go out, man, they're everywhere.
Oh yeah, So the Uroplatus are all kind of geared that same way too. Second the lights go off, they're a different animal. They're bouncing around. All my animals are in my bedroom, right? So I'm trying to go to sleep, and I just hear like banging and like thudding and like random like leaves and branches crashing. I'm like, oh Jesus. So
gotta fix that tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like it's a complete night and day difference. No pun intended.
Oh yeah. No, all the puns there.
Yeah.
It's but working a day job though, you come home and you're only a couple hours away, and then night hits, and then you get to see all your animals doing what they're supposed to do. And sometimes I'll kind of go into the room with a headlamp, and I'll look around and see them all active and stuff. And that's where I get the most enjoyment out of these things is
man.
Kind of going around at night with the headlamp and like kind of peering through each enclosure, like, what are you doing? Because they're really reluctant to eat or to do anything really during the day, but at night they're insane.
Dude, they're awesome. My it's not like a local zoo, but it's the closest zoo I've got to them is Riverbank Zoo in Columbia, South Carolina, and they have a whole Uroplatus like breeding section. I don't know how many species they have, but they have a ton, and it's like a whole back room with a clear door that you can like look into.
Oh wow!
And it is intense. It's really a random species for a zoo to be that involved with, but it's like an entire section of their reptile house is just Uroplatus.
That's
but
awesome.
Every time I go in there, I'm like, I wish I could be in here at night and just see what's going on, because you can see them in each cage, right? But they're so stationary and stuff, and I can't imagine how active. Like, this on display on top of the back room, they probably have 20 Uroplatus enclosures like on display that you can just like look into. So I'm sure those would just be like buzzing with life.
I gotta be careful when I go in at night, because I've had like Sakura like jump me before and like bite my thumbs and stuff. If I haven't been, I'll go in there to look at eggs, and it's like the lights are off. And I'm like, oh well, I think this female's gonna lay, so I'll go in there with eggs, and then like from behind a branch out of nowhere, like
attack.
Like
That's awesome.
They're not. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
They're not the cleanest shots either. So like, I think, like if you think crescents are, they have pretty good aim, but like their mouths open up so wide when they're going for bugs that like they'll get everything. So you'll hear like a really loud bang if they hit the side of the cage or the front screen or a piece of wood. You'll know when they're knocking bugs down. So
it's so funny, man.
It's awesome.
So how long have you been keeping Uroplatus as a whole?
Yeah, so not too terribly long. Only about 2 years at this point, I think.
Oh, so you found your jam super early.
Oh yeah, no, I know these things they're gonna be here a while. I'm not going anywhere with Uroplatus. I've kind of seen enough and like been exposed to enough to kind of recognize when like, okay, this is my groove, and these are the animals that I like to take care of. I really enjoy the husbandry and the care and like the science behind everything that goes into taking care of them. So definitely found my jam.
Love that. Yeah. So random question, but how old are you?
I just turned 22 last week.
Yeah, man. See, that's like, I think about it. So maybe in the past like year and a half really found, like I'm almost 30 now, but the last like year and a half, I really found like my lane with the cat geckos. And I'm just thinking like, man, if I would have found that at like 20 or 22,
Yeah.
Imagine
like it took me so long because I did the Noah's Ark thing for so long. So I thought that's what the hobby was,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was like, oh, I need a pair of this and I have to have a pair of these. And then, oh, these guys have these. So I got to get some, it was just that rabbit race that I was kind of stuck in for a long time.
Right.
And I was happy, but I wasn't stoked.
Yeah.
If that makes sense,
Yeah.
So it's cool that you found your jam so early in life, because now you just have like a legit lifetime of just,
getting able to kind of hone my craft. No, that's something I'm super excited, and I'm just blessed that I found them when I did.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, I don't know how long they're gonna be coming in. I'm constantly seeing them for a couple $100 on Morph Market and stuff. I'm like, man, that's not gonna be around forever. So it's important we establish them sooner rather than later. So I'm just kind of really thankful that I kind of found them when I did. So.
Yeah, I think when I was 22, I still thought I was going to be a crocodile farmer. So things were not developed fully in the brain there. So
it's funny to actually, now that I think about it, at 22, I was completely out of the hobby. I was like not even in it at the time.
Weren't you? Was that after the Bearded Dragons or was that before?
I was just before I got back into it with the Bearded Dragons, thinking I was going to breed Bearded Dragons. Thank God I didn't go through with that. Jesus, man.
That would have been.
Yeah, you'd be in for something this year. It was
you ain't lying. Yeah.
Yeah. So so you've got mostly Uroplatus now, or are you still like a lot of crested geckos as well?
So cresteds have been whittling down. I've got close to a 4.6, 4.4-ish around there. Just some of my favorite animals I've kept. I'm only gonna be doing like 2 or 3 pairings this year probably. But it's all stuff I'm still really stoked about it. So I'm a big fan of the red base stuff. So the red and the white, I think that mix of colors is super cool and stuff I still get a kick out of every day. And then with the Gargs, I've got maybe 6 or 7-ish, something around there.
And they're sick.
They are, yeah. No,
so nice, dude.
I don't tell anybody else I said this, but man, those Gargs are kind of the better new cow. I'm gonna be honest.
Dude, that's what we've been saying for a minute. Yeah.
Dude, they're out basking all the time. Like,
they're
actually like I see them just as much as my leaf tails. That's saying a lot because they're always out. Like, I can always tell where they are because they're bright red and the white background with the green pants. Like, you know where your Gargs are all the time. So, just like being able to come home, look across the room and seeing like little red dots on the other side of the enclosures. It's cool. It's really cool. And I just don't get that. You don't really get that with cresteds, right? They're always under the leaf litter and kind of out of sight.
When we hit Tinley last year, in October, that was like gargoyle overload for me. And I was like, I didn't realize how nice like some of these are,
Dude, it's when you see some of these things in person, like the saturation just can't come over the camera, and you you pick one up and you look at it, you're like, man, that is a shade that I never thought I would see on an animal. So
and
I'm glad we finally got some, man, because like my girlfriend, before we got together, she was not into reptiles at all.
Yeah.
And then we got together and I was already starting to like build the gecko army at the time. So she was like, she helped me out in the room, like little stuff here and there. And then we went to, I think it was October Tinley. She was looking at all the gargoyles and she's like, these are really cool. She was like thinking about maybe getting some. And then we hit the St. Louis NARBC show and she found that red male we have now. And she's like, I'm buying it. And I was like, go for it, go for it. And she got home. She's like, we need an army of these. And I was like, oh God, here we go. I'm game, but like it started.
No, yeah. And I think, they occupy a different niche in New Caledonia. They don't integrate too heavily with larger geckos. So they're kind of top dog where they are. So they have this confidence about them, which in a small package comes out to be like a really cool gecko just for observing behaviors and stuff. It's really gratifying keeping them because you see them all the time. Yeah,
I like them. I like them more than the lychee, but
I used to have lychee. Went to a friend, but I'm happy with the Gargs just because it's the perfect size too. It's it can fit in your hand.
It is, man. It's like a medium size. Like it's still impressive to like your average Joe of like a size of a gecko,
right?
But to us, it's still small.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
What's the Rhacodactylus market look like these days? Like, is it did it go down with the ball pythons and stuff, or because I know for a second there it was like cresties like were the end all be all of the reptile market.
Yeah, I think it's definitely leveled out from what I can tell. Okay. And I think people are still willing to buy. They just want to buy at the right price. So I think people still have an idea in their head that they're going to get X for an animal, when in reality, they're not going to get it. So I think that's kind of putting a bad taste in people's mouths. But if you just kind of evaluate the value of your animals on the market, obviously they mean the world to us, but like monetarily, you just reevaluate it, you'll sell animals just fine, I think.
Gotcha.
Especially if you're producing quality stuff, people will want it. So I guess just the same thing that tell everybody, right? Like if you like it, run with it. So
100%.
It's all about whether if you would buy the animal, then, or if like you kind of got to look at it on the other end, right? So if you're selling cresteds, would you buy your cresteds? At what price would you buy your, like, actually pay money for? Like, picture yourself kind of taking out the wallet, taking out the bills and handing it over. Like, think about it that way. It kind of helps kind of dial in your pricing. And
that's a great way to think about it. I feel like a lot more people need to think like that.
Not what you want for it, what you yourself would pay for it, right?
Right.
You're also looking at the animal a little bit through rose-tinted glasses, right? So you'll be happier and you'll have more success, and it'll feel good to when people kind of appreciate what you're producing. So I think that'll, I know some people in the hobby have kind of gotten out and have been kind of soured to cresteds and gargs. Not so much gargs, but I think it would definitely help if you kind of look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. It's just funny because I feel like the gecko game was like almost isolated for a while from this, like the python market, where it's like everyone's in it for money and you can't really trust the guy next to you necessarily of whether or not they, are actually in it for the snakes, and which most of them were. It's just, there was the few that tainted the perspective. And so once cresteds like popped off the way that they did, it was like almost like open game for everyone to get in and start making money.
Totally. And I think the crested game kind of exploded at the right time when the hobby kind of from day one kind of policed itself as far as like care requirements and husbandry practices. Like it's very well self-policed. Like if anything gets out about you taking care of your animals in a, less than satisfactory manner, like, you'll get blown up. So I would highly recommend. So that's been kind of nice. As far as that, you kind of, if enough people kind of support a person, they're taking good care of their animals, and you're going to get a quality animal. So
and for the most part too, it's like the rack game isn't in the geckos as much. I mean, it is for leopard geckos and stuff, but for cresties, it's harder to. I guess you could do larger racks, but it's still harder. So which is nice because the rack game, not for me, man, not for me. I was trying to sell my last rack today. I had a lady, Facebook Marketplace, of course. I had a lady coming over to pick it up and then ghosted.
You? That's how it goes, man.
Yeah. It was my last rack, though, man. I was getting it out. Couldn't happen. But speaking of racks going into enclosures, I think we should let the viewers know about what's going on behind you, because you've got a lot of cool stuff. Yeah.
So I got you guys set up on the table, right, or in the reptile cart right now.
Okay. So are these like your standard enclosures behind you? Is this kind of what you keep everything in?
So I've kind of transitioned the entire room to ReptiBreeze enclosures. Working at ZoomEd, obviously it's pretty cost effective.
Nice.
But I'd recommend these things all day, even if I didn't work here. Like they're still it's still pretty economical to kind of do what I do. I found that ReptiBreezes are a little bit different than most standard glass enclosures. They come in a 16-inch wide version, which on a standard baker rack fits perfectly. So if you have a 3-foot baker rack, 2 16 by 16 by whatevers will fit snugly in there. You don't get this like itching sensation of like wasted space. So I discovered that, and then I was like, well, if I'm taking care of tropical geckos here with these things and I'm spraying the cage, I'm going to get water all over my walls. And when I move out of here in a couple months, my landlord's going to have an aneurysm about the black mold all over my walls. So I had to figure out a solution for that pretty quick. Which kind of dropped me into finding Polywall, which is this awesome material sent from the chameleon deities. So it's It's this like sheet plastic. You can cut it with scissors, but it's still like really durable stuff. Like I couldn't rip it if I tried. And it's thin enough that so what I do is when I'm building up, when I'm kind of screwing together the Repti Breezes, is I will take panels of polywall, cut them to size of the 3 kind of outer panels. I'll cut them to those exact sizes, and then I'll go through with a pen, mark holes for screws, and I'll hole punch them. And then I'll just screw it together like normal, but just with the polywall panels in between. And that has worked amazing for me. I've loved them. Keeps humidity in, keeps water off my walls. It looks like nice PVC enclosures.
Yeah, it does. So man, yeah,
I've had some questions about like, where'd you get those PVCs? I'm like, well, they're not PVCs. They're they're Repti Breezes, but and then being screen enclosures, right? They're so incredibly light. Like moving around and rearranging the room is super easy, especially for someone like me who's not in stable housing for the foreseeable future. Just being in a kind of a more college living situation. Yeah. I'm graduated now as of a couple weeks ago, but
nice, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Man.
Appreciate it. But yeah, so I'm still gonna be renting. I mean, the next few years of my life. Yeah. So being able to easily move the collection around is important. And so the Repti Breezes have been awesome. And I kind of run that for everything. I got them for the guards and cresteds. I got them for the all the Uroplatus. A few kind of changes here and there for some species. So like my room, it often stays about 50 to 60% humidity. And I found that that's perfect for keeping the guards just in the standard 16-20s with the screen fronts. I don't have to worry about covering any of the panels with glass or acrylic or anything. I just make sure to spray every night, and that works. And spraying all the cages at every single night, it definitely jumps the humidity at night in the room as well too. So there's that. But with the mossy leaf tails and the line leaf tails, I picked sizes that had acrylic fronts. Some of the Repti Breezes, they come with acrylic fronts.
Really?
Okay. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have it's called a deluxe version. And it comes with the substrate tray in the box, as well as the acrylic front, and then it also has like a ring of LEDs kind of installed in the top of the Repti Breeze itself. So you don't really have to worry about adding like another plant LED. You can just kind of throw your T5 UVB whatever on there, and then kind of run that, which is nice.
That's super sick. I didn't know that they offered that. That's
Yeah, there's a couple sizes like that. So there's the deluxe versions of the 16-30 and the 2x2x4. Additionally, we've got the Nano Breezes all come with acrylic doors. So that's 10x10x12, which I use for all my grow outs. And then the 3x18x3, the big boy, that thing's got acrylic doors as well.
Wow,
that's super awesome. Cool, man.
Yeah, I didn't. The last time I used a screen enclosure was quite some time ago, but I just remember. I think it was an Exoterra. So, but I just remember it being very flimsy. You had no options. So I haven't had much experience with the Repti Breezes and stuff. But that's awesome.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to like throw it off a roof or anything, but you know, as far as normal use goes, like the polywall definitely keeps them a little bit more sturdy. Like I'm not worried about punching holes through the sides of my enclosures, just from regular use on some of those screen panels. But nice thing about screen is you can just rip it out and replace it. So
100%. And especially for the animals you're keeping, it feels like the right fit, and everything, like you said, looks really good and professional. And I can see why people are asking you, where'd you get the PVC? Are those fancy enclosures, and where can we get them? Yeah, that's awesome. No, the video you posted, was it like 2 days ago, where you were doing the polywall, was super interesting. Yeah, and it just was like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, duh, you could just modify this, like with any plastic. And it was great. It was like,
just hack it.
Perfect. Yeah. Which that's all what this is all about. So you got it from the Chameleon guys initially?
Yeah. So I got the idea from the Chameleon guys who use like a corrugated plastic often. And then they'll just cut that to size and just kind of press it into the enclosures. I didn't trust my hand with cutting it to size. Like I knew it was going to look janky if I tried. It was mainly coming to Polywall for the ability to kind of get it more kind of dialed in and more like exact, more professional looking. I think the corrugated plastic looks great in some people's rooms. In other people's rooms, it's got all chopped up lines and stuff, and it doesn't look the best, but it works great. And I like the idea and like the concept. So I was like, all right, well, how do I make it look more professional? And just from tootling around the Home Depot in town, got to the it's in the back next to the like the melamine boards and stuff, and like it's designed to be used to line showers. I think that's its.
Okay,
use.
yeah.
So it's waterproof. Yeah, and I stumbled upon that, and I was like, this light bulb moment. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the bee's knees for what I need. So
yeah. It's funny how like just walking through Home Depot, like if you've got time and you are just idea searching, like honestly just walking through and like looking at supplies and being like, how can I use this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that statement. And like hardware stores, they're all different. They all carry like weird, like specialty products in different areas. So like, I didn't end up buying it, but if I ended up getting like 1 million line leaf tail geckos, they're bamboo specialists, right? So, I was walking around Home Depot the other day, and they sell like 10-foot, 20-foot stretches of like thick bamboo fencing. Like it's 2-inch thick bamboo, kind of all stringed together, but it's like at least like 50 pieces in like this roll.
That's awesome.
Like $60. So I'm like, oh geez, that would be cool to mess with some of that.
Yeah, they have like a thin one too. Like it's like a really thin bamboo one that I used to use for backgrounds, like before I knew what I was doing, which was cool. It like made it look like a grassland type thing, but that did not work very well long term because that's very they degrade very quickly.
Yeah, so. I can imagine.
So does that polywall come in like a 4x8 sheet?
Yes, 4x8 sheet. Yep.
Nice. I'm assuming it's fairly cost effective too.
It's $25.
Damn.
Yeah, dude,
and that does like 16/20s. So
see, this is what we always harp on the show, man. It's like you gotta try stuff to see if it works, and if it works, run with it.
Yeah,
that's all you gotta do.
Right.
It's so nice.
Yeah, no, it's really cheap, and like you can get 16x16x20 Repti breezes for like you can get them on Chewy sometimes for like $50. So to outfit an entire the rack I like to recommend for doing this on is not the 4-foot rack, it's the 3-foot rack. Because that'll fit 2 16 wide enclosures seamlessly. And you can fit 3 levels of those 16/20s on it as like a reasonably sized human being. You can reach the top and see the top too. So to outfit an entire rack with the polywall and all that, you could probably do it under $500.
Nice.
Yeah, it's insane.
So rack included. So
yeah,
your probably most expensive part is going to be the lighting, the UVB and stuff. Is probably
absolutely yeah. And that kind of differs, species to species as well. So it's and then you get to mess with it, as you want. Like, I'm a big fan of keeping all the enclosures and like levels in the room kind of standard. I'm a big fogger guy. I listened to like One Too Many Chameleon Academy episodes, and they converted me to like a diehard fogger. And so being able to run like fog lines across cages and stuff is super huge.
That's awesome. We got to talk about that for sure.
Absolutely.
But I think should we just go into I think setting up a Uroplatus, I think is what we should kind of focus on for now, and like how you I'm sure it varies by species because of how specific they are, but like I don't know if you have a main species that you want to talk through first, and like your general thought process on setting them up, and like the habitat niche you're trying to fill and everything there.
Right. Yeah. So if I was to start anybody on a Uroplatus, I would point them in the direction of Uroplatus sakurae, the mossy leaf-tailed gecko, or Uroplatus ebanaui, the spear point leaf-tailed gecko. I think those two have the like the brightest future in the reptile hobby, and I think a lot of people are going to would enjoy keeping them. I think those are going to be super, super popular, and I've definitely seen it kind of come around this past year. a lot of people are getting them in and kind of realizing how easy they can be. So I guess I can start with the spear point. They come from a lot drier of an area than I think a lot of people realize. They draw a lot of similarities in appearance to Uroplatus fantasticus, the satanic leaf-tailed gecko, which is by far the most iconic, I think. Satanics are really difficult. They're just, there's a lot more yet to be careful of with satanics, I think. So where they differ is the Ebanaui, the spear points, are kind of like a lowland species. They're kind of lower elevation. They're kind of closer to the coast. So if you think about it, you're going to have a little bit more drastic temperature fluctuations. Where they come from is a lot drier. They're not necessarily like a rainforest species. So as far as like how that kind of translates to keeping, the Fantasticus well, before that, the Fantasticus are more of a highland species. So they like it a little bit cooler, kind of more consistent temperatures, much more humid, which can be hard to replicate
for sure
effectively in an enclosure. Like you can definitely keep those things too wet, get weird bacterial things if you're constantly trying to keep it humid. But back to the Ebanaui, they were great for enclosures because of their humidity requirements, and their heat tolerances are by far the most extreme out of any Uroplatus, I think. I've gotten mine down to, I think, high 50s, low 60s at night before.
Oh, wow.
And the thing with them though is you just gotta be able to heat them back up, get them back into the 70s during the day, which can be accomplished with a simple UVB bulb, but it radiates enough heat that it kind of heats up that little area in the top of the enclosure to the correct temps. But so here, let me backtrack. I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place right now.
You're good. No, you're good, man.
So if I was setting up a spear point, I really like the 16-16-20s. I run. I think there's plenty of space for a 1.2 trio of spear points.
Okay.
The thing about Uroplatus though is that the males are, at least in mossies and spear points, they're not the most cantankerous with each other. Like it doesn't work the same as like cresteds or gargs, where you put two males together and they'll go at it. And I'll talk on that a little bit later, but there's a little bit of a breeding strategy I kind of implemented in this past year with that. But yeah, so starting with the 16-16-20, I like to run like a single like Ficus benjamina, the Ficus standard Ficus tree, to fill that enclosure. One from like a 5-inch pot will fill that enclosure for you. Supplement with twigs and small branches. They're trying to mimic dead leaf litter, right? So in dead leaves, so providing a good leaf litter layer is important. And then I do provide UVB. I use a T5 5.0 high output, and that does the trick. I don't really provide any basking, like dedicated basking lamps for them. They can definitely get hotter. I think the hottest I got mine this past year was 85 on the hotspot, or in the upper echelon of the enclosure. And having that variance where it's like kind of like 85 at the top and then down to 70, 72, 73 in the bottom is kind of what I like to run for mine. But then I run them with all screen fronted enclosures. And the thing with them is that you got to let it dry out. So I like to mist every other night with them to every night occasionally. But I always like to make sure that there's no standing water. There's no kind of water droplets that are lingering there for too long. It's not like a heavy kind of coat all the surfaces kind of mist. It's like a just 5 seconds, cover what you can see in the enclosure with a layer of water droplets, and they'll drink those and get enough hydration from that. And then you can kind of let that dry off and then do it again the next day or two. So that lack of humidity requirement, I think, is really, really awesome. As far as kind of care and easiness with that. It kind of keeps it really simple and really easy to manage.
Are you hand misting them, or do you have a automatic?
Yeah, I got a hand mister. I hand mist all my enclosures. I'm still at that point. I haven't followed out with the Mist King just yet. Something scares me about also with these, like I'm a little bit worried about like if it went on for a little too long, water kind of dripping out of them too.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's definitely something I gotta think about. But yeah,
because I was gonna ask like how you designate like what enclosure gets, depending on the species, if you're only misting every other day for like the spear points, and then other things needing to be misted daily. But if you're hand misting, that makes sense. So
I hand mist in here. I might eventually, if I get like a large enough wall of the same species and the same enclosures, I'll probably throw a dedicated mister on that. But when it's just like a couple rows of this, doesn't really make sense right now. So
I got you.
I'll scale up eventually, but not just yet.
Yeah. There's something to be said too. I feel like we've asked this to a couple of people about hand misting versus automatic, and just having the control over it and knowing you're going to do it, especially if you're like a very regular person. I have like extreme ADHD and can't focus on a single thing. So I would forget, daily what I did and didn't do. So no, but I think that there's something to be said about that, and having that control and that interaction too with the enclosure, and having a dedicated time where you're I'm misting here, and that gives me a chance to like assess the enclosure, think about, any changes and stuff. But
absolutely.
Are you watering plant? Like, do you do extra water for the plants or anything, or does it go off the misting or the misting?
Yeah. So with the ficus, they definitely tell you when they're pissed off. You'll start to see kind of yellowing leaves. So yeah, I'll spray. I'll kind of change the nozzle to kind of shoot the stream of water, and I'll water the plant separately.
Okay.
With breeding with Ebanaui, from what I've heard, and I just implemented this off the bat, so I don't really know if this is like set in stone, but I have heard reports of them kind of being hard to get going if you keep your substrate like always super damp. With mine, I kind of keep, so they're a small gecko. They're like 3 to 4 inches, and they lay microscopic eggs, like pinky nail, pea-sized eggs. And they do this really neat thing. A little bit of sarcasm there. Well, they'll roll their eggs in dirt to hide them.
Oh man!
And they'll sit there with their back legs, and they'll kind of spin their eggs in a circle, kind of coating them in a layer of dirt. And I keep mine on peat moss, on a peat moss based substrate. And when that stuff dries out, it gets a little dusty.
Yeah.
It disappears. Finding eggs is a trip. Like, I could check the same enclosure like 5 times and not find eggs, and then they've always been there. So it's hard to know when they lay, or when they did lay. But I think it's important to have an area that's dried out. That's what I've noticed, is that they always lay their eggs under leaf litter in like a drier substrate. They tend to prefer that over like an area that's super damp. And I try and keep like the base of the tree really damp, but it would be a great spot if I was a gecko to lay eggs there, but they don't. So I think I am seeing a little bit of a connection there, I think.
Okay. That's interesting.
But
it is.
But yeah, you can kind of train them to kind of lay in a certain area too, by kind of placing all the leaf litter in the front. That way you don't have to kind of reach back into the back in the enclosure and get all back there.
I just wanted to share the screen really quick so people could kind of see what these things look like. They're kind of insane.
Oh, yeah. At night, their eyes will, all Uroplatus, a lot of the Uroplatus, their eyes will actually change color.
Oh wow!
When they fire up, so the Lineatus and the Ebanaui, they'll get these bright blood red eyes, and it's pretty incredible. The Sakura will kind of,
Yeah, that's sick. That's crazy, actually. I've never heard of that, of the eyes changing color when they fire up.
Yeah, it's extreme. Like, when I was first getting my Lineatus, I didn't even like realize that was a thing. So I was asking the seller, like, do you got any with red eyes? I saw this picture online. I'm like, I sound like an absolute fool.
But I want the stoned ones.
Yeah.
The ones that are always stoned.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah. They go through a pretty dramatic fire up and fire down. But yeah, I think I kind of covered the bases on spear points. There's a lot more to them, but if there's anything else you think I should hit with those?
No, man, I think that's good. I think it's interesting too, because like you said, they're trying to imitate dead leaves. So they're pretty terrestrial, right?
I want to say that they're consistently found in like the first 3 feet. Okay. Off of the forest floor. I don't think they're not a species that ventures too high up into the canopy. I think they stay pretty much head level and under from what I've read. It makes sense because they lay their eggs in the substrate. There's a lot of small kind of leaves that they can blend into. There's a lot of decaying plant material down there, so it kind of makes sense in my head that they would be in the lower kind of areas. So that's still arboreal, right? Like you got to treat them like an arboreal gecko, but in the grand scheme of things, they're definitely lower down.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Just because of especially when I think of a Uroplatus, I'm thinking of the giant ones or the mossies, that are super arboreal and are going to be imitating bark. So it's really interesting to think about something that's, primarily in the first 3 feet and is completely adapted differently, like you've said already about how different they are. But they're awesome, man. I think they're cooler than the Fantasticus, personally.
Amen. No, I think that too, and I'll die on that hill for sure. They're sexually dimorphic. And really drastically so. I think the males are absolutely incredible. So the males are going to get these kind of pronounced spines down their backs. They'll have like a ridge of almost like it's in like the same like row as like a crested gecko, but they're not. There's far fewer. There's only like a handful of them, but they're in like kind of sets of 2 kind of going down the back or going down the spine. And then their tails are going to have some hole punches out of them. But it looks like they're just spiny. They got a ton of spines. Yeah. Some females I've seen have them, but to a much lesser degree. They're often smooth.
It's hard to
so that would be a male.
Yeah, that's crazy. You can kind of see the spines.
And you don't see that on Fantasticus. So
yeah,
I think it's funny, man. These are before I really found the cat geckos. This was what I wanted to get into. Like I've always loved spear points so much, man. They've always been my favorite. They're so fucking cool.
They're truly incredible.
They definitely had these at the zoo because I remember these now.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. So Ebanaui, they call it the Ebanaui group, and it's composed of like a bunch of different leaf mimic species. So you can see how many kind of fall. Man. Like those are all different species, right? So there's so many little different species of Uroplatus that aren't really described, or not in the hobby. I know there's another one that looks like a spear point, but gets a little bit larger. And often gets confused with them. I think it's Uroplatus fiera. Those have come into the U.S. a couple times. But
so are these like numbers, or this is just the specimen they're talking about?
I believe that's a specimen, but a lot of them go by like Uroplatus species, kind of number 4 or number 5. Like there's definitely a couple undescribed out there still.
Like it's like the plecos when they're like LP90s or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's pretty much the same thing, I think.
Wow.
Where that's awesome. All they have to distinguish them at this point.
It's wild because it's like Madagascar seems like somewhere that's been like fully explored and they know everything about, but I feel like it really isn't. And with how much habitat destruction has happened over there, it's like how much has already gone that we didn't even know existed.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like with Madagascar too, like I want to say in the case of Uroplatus giganteus, it's the largest species of Uroplatus. It's a massive bark mimic. I want to say they're from a very specific or very small region, but that region there's a lot of civil unrest there, or it's controlled by like a party that would definitely not let visitors come in and observe.
Right.
So collecting and kind of learning anything about them is really difficult, and that's kind of consistent across a couple Uroplatus ranges in Madagascar. So there's definitely some things happening that have kind of put a pause on further research, unfortunately. But
in Madagascar too was like, wasn't it happening for a while where the government would like change, they'd allow exportation, we'd get a bunch of random crazy stuff, and then the government would change again, then it got shut down. And I feel like it was like a period of like 10 years where that just kept happening. But now it's like, now it's shut, right?
So there actually was an export this year,
okay,
but they're quoting it pretty aggressively.
Gotcha.
And it's like, it's kind of like the same stuff coming in. It's I think you can still pretty easily get wild caught lineatus, fimbriatus, Sikore, Semeti, Fiera comes in occasionally, but I haven't seen much else pop up on lists, unfortunately. Or actually, I don't know.
It's a hard one.
It's a debacle, right? Because Madagascar is so rapidly disappearing just because of how they're clear cutting the forests for sugarcane, right? So, on one hand, me as a Uroplatus hobbyist and like a fan of these species and a admirer, like I want to preserve them and not only captivity, but I want them to be around, right? So I'm not alluding to like my animals ever going back to the wild. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
But preserving them, it's just so future generations can they have them, right? So they're just exposed to them, and it's not just like this folk creature that existed long ago, right? I want them to be around. So
we talked to Roy Arthur Blodgett about this too, about the Polychrus, but it's like these are species, except for apparently my local zoo, but a lot of zoos aren't necessarily like highly involved with these niche species and stuff like that, and so no, these animals probably aren't going to go back into the wild, but like what happens in 20, 30 years when the zoo's like, holy shit, we should have been, dealing with this, trying to figure it out. Where can we get them? And it's like, Jack over here has got 300 of them, and
he's got a whole warehouse full.
Dude, the way the Abanawi I've been cranking out, the Abanawi are so dang prolific. Like every week I've found eggs, and I only have 2 females in each enclosure. Like it's pretty ridiculous. The numbers things are going to pump out. So they're extremely prolific, and I imagine they're going to become very numbered in the hobby soon.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a big year for Uroplatus coming up.
That's awesome.
Just for the hobby in general. I think a lot of people are figuring them out.
Yeah, and it feels like a species too, or a group of species that fits within the model that the hobby's moving towards. With these like smaller, people are getting more into like smaller animals, realizing that they can do more for smaller animals. They can have more with smaller animals, and just seems to be the trend.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And I think the smaller Uroplatus species are going to be very prominent coming soon.
That's awesome.
And I'm excited. Yeah. Just because of I think there's a lot of work that can be done with kind of bringing out certain phenotypes with them. Like there's the Abanawi, they come in a few different, I guess, quote unquote base colors. Okay. They're sexually dimorphic in the way that they present base colors, but it's not always consistent. Like, so I've got a couple, both male and female, that are yellow, yellow based. I consider them yellow based animals. Mm-hmm. And it's like a very light shade of yellow. Some where it's a more darker form. So they're going to be darker, like a dark brown, dark gray. And the female counterpart to that is like a rusty red color. I've kind of noticed that those are so far what I've seen, like the 2 most common lanes, I guess, or ways that they present. So there's a lot of like, I imagine there's a lot of selective breeding that can be done to kind of bring out those base colors a little bit more. And definitely Abanawi are definitely known in the Uroplatus hobby as of having some of the most incredible like veining, like the little swirls and the ridges to mimic leaf veins. Like Abanawi present those pretty aggressively, and there's definitely some people that have been kind of selective breeding to kind of show more of those veins and those swirls.
Oh, wow.
And some of those animals look incredible.
Wow. That's awesome. So is it like where they're coming from? It would be like a different species of tree that's the predominant tree, and that's why they're like changing colors. Or okay,
I'm sure it's working the same way that the moths are working. In the cities versus in the wilderness. They're kind of naturally selecting for different color forms. But it's all under the same species.
Okay, Gotcha. The classic biology case study that everyone does is the moths.
It's the moths, right? So
that's awesome.
It's really cool.
Cool. Yeah. So I think we definitely covered a good bit there with those. And so you said the mossies are also the one that you would recommend for
mossies
people?
are another great beginner Uroplatus. You have to be a little more careful with humidity. So I do a little bit different of a thing there. I kind of just don't, freehand it. Did I spray tonight? Yes, no, whatever. I'll go to bed. You got to be on top of your humidity game with them. So I keep those. Keep pairs in singles in 16 by 16 by 30s. So I give them the extra height. I think having at least 30 inches, honestly, would rather give them 3 foot, but I think giving them the extra height is super important. I don't really like to keep them in 2 foot tall enclosures. Truthfully, I know it's just another 6 inches, but man, when I upgrade to the 30s, those animals, they definitely use all of that height. So with those, as far as what I would put in the enclosure, I keep them with just branches that I collect outdoors, but I've noticed that they have a strong preference for smooth branches. They almost will never touch cork branches. Like it's like 1 in 100 will sleep on cork branches versus even the glass. A lot of them prefer the glass over many cork branches. So I think it has to do with the roughness of the bark. It's not really they're kind of trained to know what species of tree that they blend into, right? And they're kind of trained to kind of stick to those. And I've noticed that the keeping smooth branches, I think birch works excellent. Some oak branches work really well as well. Those are kind of the two that I stick to, and just doing kind of long vertical poles in the enclosure, keeping the branches about 2 to 3 inches in diameter. I'll do a couple long vertical poles going up the enclosure, and then I'll do like a couple of slanting branches to kind of connect them. And I've noticed at night they'll use them like a catwalk, and they'll kind of walk around that network, kind of perching, hunting insects. They'll kind of perch with, kind of perpendicular with the horizontal branches, kind of looking down. When a bug kind of walks under them, they'll jump them from 2 feet up in the air and they'll slam it. It's awesome. And then during the day, they're going to be sleeping kind of pressed up against those branches, but they're always in. I've noticed that they kind of shimmy around the branches depending on how much light they want to be exposed to, probably related to UVB, I would imagine, which is cool. And then they'll kind of shimmy up the branch or down the branch depending on how warm they want to get. With them, I do like to keep them a little bit cooler than the Ebanaui. I'm a little bit more worried about keeping them cool. That's the big thing everybody worries about with Uroplatus, is getting them too hot.
Right. Yeah, that's what I hear a lot.
Is getting them too hot. So I try and keep, just in the future, it's good to try and keep your ambient room temp probably under 80. And they can handle it a little bit. But I would never really want to see them consistently over like 83, I don't think, as like a forced temperature, right? There's going to be microclimates in the enclosure, but if they're forced to stay in the high, mid to high 80s, then that could be an issue. So as long as we can keep it under that, should be smooth sailing as far as temperature is concerned. I got them as low as 63 this past year, to kind of cycle them for breeding. The Ebanaui, you don't really have to do anything special with those. I kind of do the whole, I do the light cycle, kind of the cooling period, but with those, it's pretty unnecessary. With the mossies, though, I do notice that they are a little bit more in tune with kind of the natural rhythms, right? So with those this past year, I got them colder, decreased the light cycle for 3 to 4 months pretty aggressively. I almost halved it. From normal night hours. Probably unnecessary, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
For sure.
They're getting plenty of UVB during that I kind of reduced it to about like a 6 to 8 hour photo period. And then I'll bring it back up to like a 12-hour photo period as it starts to get warmer about this time of year. I'll kind of start this whole like cycling process in October. I found is a good month to start it, where I'll drop those light hours, decrease temps just naturally. It gets cold in San Luis Obispo during those following months, and then I'll kind kind of decrease their food a bit. I noticed that if you overfeed these things, like if you just huck in like 20 crickets, they'll eat them all, but I'll find like little pockets or pills of kind of regurgitated insects. So it's definitely good to avoid those. They're kind of similar to Stropharis in that sense, where you don't want to feed them too terribly much in a single feeding. I kind of try and keep them to like, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 insects twice a week.
Wow.
And then, for the winter months, I'll kind of half those numbers. I'll still feed them twice a week, but I'll only shuck in like, a couple crickets each for each gecko. And then you kind of reverse that as you're bringing them a little bit warmer in the warmer months. So kind of for us, we had a little bit colder of a start to the year, so it's taken a little bit longer to get them started, but now they're kind of coming out of it. So I increased those light hours back to 12 hours, feeding them as normal. It's been nice and warm. And that seemed to work. I did this past year separate and then repair. What I did was I took the males out of both female enclosures for that cooling period, for that cycling period, and I stuck them together for a couple months. I'm not sure if they kind of get each other riled up. I don't think this is a species that is super high strung in that regard. Like, I think just the separation from the female is good for them to kind of reset and then get back into breeding as soon as they smell that female again. They're like, whoa, we're back in it. So and I think that helps a ton. Is where I think one of the keys is with that separation and then that repairing, but also paired with all these other factors. I hope I explained that enough.
Man, you're giving me so many. You're giving me so many ideas for the cat geckos right now. It's insane.
No, the cycling, it's super important, and I think what gets overlooked a lot with these things is the cooling period. That cooling, being able to get colder, it's an important reset for both the male and female reproductive system. And like, it's also, it's, you talk about fertility too. Like, if they're not able to get cold enough, their body isn't triggering like sperm production or egg production a lot of times. And you can get infertility issues if you're kind of keeping them consistent the entire time. I think I think that's where some people have failed in the past with breeding, is just not doing a proper cycling. But it's cookie cutter, like, or it's pretty formulaic. What you do all these steps and then you kind of put it all together. It's like clockwork. I've found.
Are they so we were talking with the spear points too, but like, so they're laying consistently. It's not like one clutch. This might sound very dumb because I don't know much about geckos, but so they're laying consistently. Are they breeding consistently, or is it they're breeding one time and then laying for the season? Then you kind of initiate the cold cycle, they stop laying, and then start over.
Right. So I did notice that I keep them together. I'm not noticing them trying to repair every single night. The males don't put too much strain on the females so far. So I feel comfortable keeping them together. People keep them together all the time. And I've noticed them, they will kind of repair about once a month. I'm noticing.
Okay.
Okay.
I've kind of seen that in one pair. I've only seen one pair, so take it with a grain of salt. But she laid a clutch. All right, paired them together. They locked that night. 3 days later, laid a clutch. Saw them repair a couple nights later, and then kind of here we are now. So I'm not gonna bank on it, but I am gonna look out for it. I have kind of like cued in a little bit, like, maybe this is a monthly thing. In the future, I think it would be good to try and just pair once for a month and then separate and then see what happens. But for now, I'm going to keep them together for the remainder of the warm months.
Yeah, that was always a question even for Brenden with the leopard geckos and stuff, is something I've always thought about, is like, are, because they produce so many eggs after, but is it like they're having to rebreed, or is it like a one-time fertilization?
Right.
Keeps going, but.
So I do think that they are able to retain sperm though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of imported females kind of dropping clutches on people.
Okay.
it's kind of the same with the chameleons in that way. Where people will get like random female carpet chameleons, drop clutches on them too. A lot of people have gotten babies from just buying import females. So I think they do have the ability to retain sperm to an extent.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's interesting. Do you think that they, like you were talking about the resetting of the cycle and stuff and going through the cooling period, do you think that they would just keep going and then that would impact their fertility like long term if you didn't do the reset, or are they kind of slowing down by the time you already go to do your cycling?
No, they're pounding food as long as it's warm. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to say. Because you also gotta like, before you even hit that period, like I feel like I would want to cool my animals down and kind of get them worked off the breeding season. Yeah. If they're dropping, up to 7 clutches in a year, right? Like that's a lot of reproductive stress on a female. So I just think if you're like, once you kind of hit that breeding stride, kind of once you get up in those numbers, I think it's just good to do just to stop it no matter what. Like it's hard to say because Madagascar is so cyclical. Like there's always that that 4-month period where it's dry and cold, and that either kills everything off or it resets the things that are able to survive it. So that's a good question. I don't have a great answer for you, but
no, you're good. It's every time we have these lizard discussions, I'm like, there's so much that I don't know. So it's like trying to figure out what people are thinking on that.
Right.
But with the mossies, so we're saying that the spear points are kind of at the edge of the island, and they're in the more drier habitat. Are the mossies going to be like more at elevation, like more central, or?
Yeah. So if you're looking at Madagascar on your average map, the mossy or the spear points, I want to say you'll find them in the northwestern coastline. You'll find them in Nosy Bay. So if you're familiar with Nosy Bay locality, panther chameleons, they'll overlap with those. They'll overlap with a couple day gecko species, and then Sakurae are on the eastern side of the island. So a lot more rainforesty, and so the ebony are more in like deciduous forests, kind of dry. I don't want to say dry in the sense that it's a desert species. I don't want to get confused in that regard. Like it's still humid, but it's not constant rain, if that makes sense. So it's not standing water. They're not exposed to just persistent water. The mossies are a little bit different. They definitely like it a bit more humid. So what I do with them is I run foggers at night. Kind of pick this up from the chameleon guys, because panther chameleons are all over Madagascar, right? And I think the Uroplatus, I don't want to speak for the Uroplatus community, but for me at least, I learned a lot of great care information and care tips and tricks from the chameleon people because they overlap. And fogging was one that I picked up this past year from that Chameleon Academy podcast, where they talked about the chameleons are able to kind of increase their hydration. They're able to get water from the air just from kind of breathing it in just through respiration. And they did like weight studies where they kind of weighed the chameleon before it went to sleep, fogged it, weighed it again, didn't feed it, but it gained weight.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's consistent with Uroplatus, but I do imagine that it is to an extent, just because it works the same way with us. Like we get a little bit of hydration from breathing in like vapor and like the foggers and stuff. Like I think that is, I'm pretty sure that's a thing. But where was I? So with the foggers, I'll kick those on for 6 hours at night, 4 to 6 hours at night, every single night for the mossies. And I kind of have it stream down one of the back end of their enclosure and kind of spill out the front. They have areas where it's not kind of directly fogging, if that makes sense. So they can get away from it if they so choose, but a lot of that enclosure is kind of filled with that fog. And it's cooler fog too. Like it'll kind of dissipate a lot of the heat built up as well. So it also kind of helps get the night temps a little bit lower too. Which is nice and important, I think, for mossies at least. I definitely like to let them get down into the mid 60s, mid to high 60s at night. I think that's good.
And that kind of follows like the natural cycle. Like normally it would get more humid at night as
right. Yeah, it's that cloud layer kind of dropping back down as the heat kind of dissipates.
Yeah.
So I do that with them. I'll spray them every night too, or I'll try to. But if I miss a night, the foggers kick on and kind of leave little dewdrops all over the plants and stuff as well. And they don't really seem to like getting blasted by water either. So from like a care perspective, I kind of like that method of administering hydration where it's not kind of putting in any kind of stress or on the animal.
Yeah.
So are you go ahead, Jack.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, I remember watching all these videos of people like hydrating their snakes or whatever with like a mister. And I remember trying to do that. And my snake's like freaking out. And I was
they don't like it.
I'm spraying you right in the face. Like, why would you like this?
Yeah, they don't like it.
Yeah.
You can definitely see them like kind of like cats. They'll like arch their backs and
yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, they don't like it. Then maybe try something else.
I have one single cat gecko, dude. Every time I spray, I'll see her like she'll poke around like a cork flat in there, and I'll start spraying her, and she will literally run out and like lay on a leaf. And she's the only animal I have that enjoys being just blasted with water. It's insane.
Sit there lapping it up, and
dude, she loves it.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah, no, I definitely noticed that the mossies they'll definitely sit there for a little while and lap water up, but like them being directly hit with mist, it seems to definitely piss them off. So
not a big fan.
Not a big fan.
Are you using the same like peat moss type substrate with those guys?
Yeah, I'll do like a 50-50 blend with sand oftentimes.
Okay.
It just drains better, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that I'm like putting so much water in it that I need like a drainage layer. I don't run drainage layers personally. But from like I don't think the peat moss absorbs water the best, so it'll kind of run off. If you let it dry out, it'll like run off before it reabsorbs it a lot of the time. So it just helps with that too. Also, like I was watching like this Exoterra expedition to Madagascar, and they're always commenting on like the sandy soil and stuff. So like, okay. Write that down. We'll
write that down.
Yeah.
Are you doing like a real thick layer, or are you just doing just enough?
So I just do the trays. I just fill the trays with soil. For the mossies, I exclusively run bird's nest ferns. It's my favorite plant to use in like all my enclosures because they're epiphytic, and I can kind of just like wrap them in sphagnum moss and just shove them into whatever cracks I want to, and they'll, as long as I spray them every night, they'll be fine. So I don't actually put any plants in that bottom layer for the mossies. I kind of just fill it with the substrate, put a little bit of leaf litter in the front half of the enclosure, kind of leave it be. And they're just like the Ebonoi. They're consistently laying under those leaves. That's where they like to lay. I kind of like to keep their substrate a little bit more moist than the Ebonoi consistently. So I'm a little bit more on top of that. But
nice. Yeah, those bird's nest ferns, man, they're like the better, easier bromeliad. I love them.
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
the best. I had one growing hydroponically in one of my turtle enclosures for a long time, and that thing like blew up, man. I was like, I need to get a new one because this is taking over my apartment. So
oh yeah. And like awesome. You'll look up pictures of these things on iNaturalist and stuff, like New Caledonian geckos, Madagascan geckos, and you'll see those damn bird's nest first and half of the photos that get taken there. So it's like a consistent, like you can find this in nature kind of thing. So
yeah, they're everywhere too. Like carpet pythons, the first one enclosure build I did was designed around bird's nest ferns because it was just like everywhere in northern Australia. It's just that's the main, So that and ferns, like regular ferns, but yeah, that's awesome.
Love my crappets as well. I got a pair of a bredli too. So
nice. Okay,
they're the best,
dude. They're awesome.
Yeah,
big bulldog head. Mine are so small, but the adults I've seen are big bulldog heads or brick red. Such a awesome snake. Oh my god. And mine are freaking active too. Like they're in a 3x18x3. They're in a glass enclosure, but always cruising. Even during the day, like they're always repositioning and reperching and stuff. I got it like shelved out and stuff. So it's cool. They're a damn cool snake.
So,
they are.
Yeah, I've always been like famously the coastal guy. Coastals used to be my
rock, dude.
They used to be my thing, dude. And then I got this pair of Brettles, and I was like, oh no, this is what a carpet python is, man.
Oh yeah, dude. The Brettles they're unreal. I really want to, because I'm in coastal California. I actually think that keeping outdoors,
keep them outside,
perfect.
Yeah,
perfect. A little bit of supplemental heat. Get it like get a heat projector or something over them, and they do awesome in our temps, because it never gets freezing, and they're able to kind of withstand day temps as long as it doesn't get insane.
Yeah, man, that'd be cool.
We've got a buddy, Zach, who kept bredli outside like all summer here in Charlotte, in North Carolina, and that was coming over and seeing, because he had like this big, like, I think it was a ferret enclosure, but it was one of the small ones,
Yeah.
And so he just had the pair in there, and they were always hanging up in this top box, just hanging out like 5 foot off the ground or whatever, and it was like this is how they should be, and they were glistening in the sun. It was incredible. And then I was like, I'm gonna do this. My girlfriend was like, you're not putting snakes outside. It's not happening. So it's like, okay. Neighbors probably wouldn't like that, but
my girlfriend wants to get the snakes out of the house, so that's actually
okay. It works better.
She wants to get it out of the room, so it kind of works that way, where it's put them outside. That's
it'd be fine. You never even see them. It's fine.
Yeah.
Are those the only snakes you got?
I also got a green tree right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, little chondro, little wild caught biok. It just got dropped off at the store, and I was like, oh, this is I'm about maybe I'll try my hand at green trees, and so far it's been pretty sick. So
that's awesome.
So completely off topic here, but how are you keeping it the same way? Very naturalistic, very
no. For that, it's in a pretty bare bones enclosure. It's just because I haven't had the time to do it in a better enclosure so far. So I just got like the PVC, the little 3/4 1/2-inch, kind of strung across the enclosure. And it's just I'm trying to just kind of knock out the kinks of keeping before I kind of jump in balls to the wall on a big huge enclosure for that thing.
I always notice that you're either on one side of the fence or the other. If you're a green tree guy,
I am ready to get to the other side of the fence. Don't get me wrong. Just haven't had the time, just haven't had the time yet. So we'll get there though. It was a somewhat recent pickup, but
and with the imports too, it's like you got to make sure everything's like 100% kosher before you go complicating it by putting.
There was definitely a bit of a quarantine period with that thing. So
it
was a long-term captive. It was somebody's pet for 3 to 4 years, so it was established and actually pretty hardy. But just getting, you never know. I think they were keeping it with like white street frogs and shit too. So I was like,
oh wow,
you're going on the other side of the room and getting your own feeding tongs and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's be smart about this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's awesome though. Your only snakes are in the Morelia group.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge sucker for Morelia. The heads, I think it's the heads.
Yeah,
the heads and the labial heat pits. It's like nothing else.
Yeah,
they're
except
awesome.
Those heat pits really get them into trouble a lot because they sometimes don't have eyes, and all they can use.
Pits.
So, the bredli seem to be better about that, but I've got a coastal that is,
kind of shoots at everything.
Yes, yeah, heat light, it's going for it, like whatever.
Yep.
So
absolutely,
but we love that about them. So
it makes them charming.
Oh yeah.
But enough about these snakes, man. This is a lizard podcast, okay?
This is a rare lizard podcast.
Yo, somebody clip it, send it out. You heard him. You heard the man. I've been trying to get him to say that for 11 episodes now, and he finally said it.
No, we got to talk about this fogger because we were talking about it. So I want to talk through like kind of how you set that up, because the way you were talking about it seems like it's pretty DIY and the way you get it set up.
I use Reptifoggers for all the fogging, but I'll string the common fogger tubes. It syncs up perfectly to 1/2-inch PVC. So if you just have 1/2-inch PVC, it'll fit right around it really nicely. And then you can kind of just use whatever 1/2-inch fittings you want to kind of string it across enclosures. So I've noticed that the Reptifoggers they do best when fogging 2 enclosures. So I'll run a T fitting and then 2 elbows going into each enclosure and having 2 enclosures per row per shelf, it works out really nicely to just have a fogger per. In the future, I think I am going to DIY something. I just got to get like the thing with the foggers though is that if you're doing a DIY solution, I want to get like all the shelves to be like the exact same height.
Yeah.
So I can just run one long 1/2-inch PVC across it. Get them fogged that way. But yeah, if you do like 3 enclosures or more than that, sometimes on the ends, the enclosures farthest from the fogger, it receives less fog. I think it's less about the fan and more about like how much fog that unit is able to produce.
Yeah.
that
So
makes sense.
That ultrasonic motor or whatever, it has a hard time producing enough fog to do more than that, I think.
Gotcha.
But,
are you using just like the standard reservoir, or you have like because I noticed I have one on my null cage, and it fogs 2 times and it's empty, and I gotta refill it again.
So I just use the standard bottles here, but at work, we have like these, those big office water jugs.
Yeah.
There's a mini version of that, and it threads perfectly.
Really?
Into the Repti foggers. Yeah. It's like a little blue version, a little mini version of the big blue office water jug things.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah.
And those last a while.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's like not too heavy where it'll topple the unit over. It's a happy medium for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, was just like it being too heavy. But I didn't even know that existed. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah. Are they like, are you going just over the top of the enclosure, like a elbow fitting going down or something like that?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I'll angle it, because if you shoot it straight through the top, if you're cranking that fogger too high, sometimes it can beat up and can actually stop the fog from going through.
Oh, okay.
That's happened a few times. So what I've done is I'll either kind of angle the fitting so that fog can kind of flow over the water beads and go down in another section of the screen, or I'll use we have like this like attachment for the Repti fogger. It's like a 3 channel it's like a black plastic unit with 3 channels going to kind of smaller fogger hoses, and I'll just kind of shove that onto the end of a 1/2-inch T fitting, and then kind of angle it, and then it's like 3 beads of fog kind of going. It creates like a wall of fog, which is cool. I know a lot of people use something similar. They'll just do like holes out of like a 1/2-inch PVC pole pipe as well, and just have it like a long bar across the top.
Gotcha.
So that's another way you could do it. I just haven't jumped to that just yet. I'm probably going to try it eventually though, once I get some burlier fans on this thing.
Gotcha. So you have fans on all your enclosures, or?
I just meant like when I do like the DIY like 5-gallon bucket fogger, I'll probably chuck a big old honking fan in there, and then a big old ultrasonic fogger too.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah.
Are they so like you were talking about putting the tube onto the PVC? Are you like latching that down with like a clamp or anything, or like a zip tie?
It press fits
right enough
pretty seamlessly. It's pretty much designed for it. It seems like, honestly, like I have none of the fog ever like seeps out or anything.
Gotcha.
But yeah, just right onto the 1/2-inch PVC.
Gotcha. That's
Cool,
ingenious.
yeah, it is.
That's great. They I'm sure that there was a background motivation there. They knew what they were doing. They just
I'm sure the corrugated tubing was based off that too.
Yeah. That's awesome.
They got to make it a little bit standard.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're running the fogger on the Mossies. Are you doing it for the spear points as well?
So I'm not doing it on the spear points. I like to let the spear points dry out overnight and throughout the day.
Gotcha.
I would worry about them being in constant contact with water. I feel like their feet they would get weird bacterial things.
Okay.
In a couple hours through the day, the Mossies are drying out too. Those branches are the water's kind of falling off of it, or kind of it doesn't really stick too well, so it'll kind of evaporate off the surfaces, if that makes sense. And then they're able to kind of press up, because it's like if you kept those things like dart frog humid, and the thing went to sleep for 10 hours, like there's definitely weird bacteria that would grow under that. It would be a pretty awesome substrate for bacteria to grow. So trying to limit that. It's like a healthy medium. You know, you got to get them. I like to get them humid when they're running around, bounding around. But when they're sleeping and pressing up against surfaces and stuff, you want to keep them a little bit drier surface wise.
Gotcha. Okay. And are you running a hotspot for the mossies, or is it still?
It's still just based off that T5. Like,
Gotcha.
It'll get kind of low 80s towards the very top of the enclosure. If they want it, they can get it. If they don't, oftentimes I find them. I temp gun them all the time at around mid 70s. Is where they seems to be their happy place. There's a few other species that do like it a little warmer, the Ebanawi, but also the Lineatus. They come from an area that definitely gets kind of 86 during the day. So I've kind of positioned them on top of the mossy rows. Heat rises in the room, right? I pretty much live in like a cardboard box the way these walls are made. So like heat comes in and then heat gets the F out. So it's very based off of the area's climate. So I don't have a whole lot of control. I got a little AC unit and a couple fans and whatnot, but I don't have a whole lot of control. But the little control I do have, I try and manipulate.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too, that people talk about it, but then actually enacting it yourself is like figuring out like how your room is and really understanding the temperatures going on just in your room without the reptiles, and then applying that into your keeping and adjusting your room like that, which is probably nice for you having all these light enclosures, and you can be like, all right, this is getting a little too hot down here or up here, and I can move it down or whatever.
Right.
That's super important. It's just figuring out your room and making sure everything is in the right place in the room.
Absolutely. With the scale that it's on right now, all these lights going off, there's definitely a bit of heat that gets produced in this room. So, and with the cold living species, you got to be a little careful. It can get surprisingly warm at the top of some rooms.
Oh yeah, it can.
Yeah. Mine is I've got it's like a basement crawl space kind of thing where my reptiles are all at. And so there's rafters in there, which is like my floor to my house. And inside of those, like between the two pieces of wood, it's like a 5-degree difference between where that is. And then, immediately below that, cause it just gets trapped in between that wood, which is really interesting and something I definitely wouldn't have figured out if I, wasn't keeping reptiles, but the weird things we learn about our house.
You temp gun the roof in the middle of the day. You're like, 90 shouldn't be that.
Yep.
That's why when I built these rooms, I insulated them so heavy because this basement gets so freaking cold in the wintertime, man.
Yeah.
Like even like I got 2 vents, there's like one there and then one over here. Even with the heat cranking, it barely gets over 65 down here, so it's just fucking which is perfect for like the cat geckos.
Yeah, sure, that's
like they love it,
but
the polychris and stuff, they're like, what in the fuck is going on right now?
Yeah, dude, I'm loving hearing all these things about the cat. God, dude, the cats, I might
do it,
dude.
It seemed like they would.
I'm like you and it's like you and a Bronia, man. Like it's like. It's starting to itch me a little bit.
Yeah,
I might need to hop on cats.
I feel like I'm probably like annoy people with how much I talk about them, dude. But they are the coolest.
No, it's like you're the only person that I hear talk about it consistently.
They're the coolest thing I've ever kept, dude. I'm telling you, they're so amazing. I could sit here all night and talk, like just tell you all the cool things about them. They're the best.
Oh, we'll have to run some trades. I'll have to get some spear points in your room too.
Hey man, I am down with that. If I can ever get it, like if I can figure out breeding these fucking things, I'll gladly send you some.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I feel like they would mesh well together too. Like,
yeah, man, you have my mind spinning on like the cooling period and because I've only had them for a little over a year now, so I haven't really been able to like experiment with that kind of stuff. And I know I've said on here before, but like information on them is very scarce,
right?
And the information you do get is very cookie cutter, breed them like a crested gecko kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just not my experience so far. They're actually, for me personally, they're extremely difficult, but you like with the cooling period and the lights and the food and stuff, I'm definitely going to try that this year.
Yeah, no, it's you throw a bunch of stuff at a wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like one thing works, but you threw it all at the wall, so like you might as well just do it all again because you don't really know which it is. But I know one thing that I'm sure, man, I couldn't imagine kind of doing Uroplatus back in the day when there was a lot less known about them.
Yeah.
They had to figure out that you actually have to keep the eggs really dry, but humid. It's like this weird balance. So what common practice these days is to put the eggs on dry perlite in an enclosed chamber with a bunch of sphagnum moss. But you got to keep those things, like you got to keep water off of them, or else they go downhill. They're kind of weird. They have weird eggs. They're really hard, like chicken eggs. Like
really,
it's not like a nice velvety substrate. They harden. Kind of like day gecko eggs. They're really similar to day gecko eggs if you have ever messed with those. But keeping those surfaces dry seems to be the name of the game for them, at least. But
where did you like? This is a broad question, but like, where did you learn about Uroplatus? Like, not initially finding out about them, but like researching them and stuff like that. Like, was there a lot of scientific papers or groups or like?
Yeah, no, the Facebook groups are great. Everybody's super respectful on those. You just type Uroplatus into Facebook and join whatever. Everybody on those is they're all about just captive propagation of these things. They want more of them, and they're not afraid to share. There's also a couple great Uroplatus books out there too, but I think the biggest one, I think the thing that most people go off of is Bion's care information. They have an excellent care profile on a lot of Uroplatus species. They're definitely the organization that's definitely kind of helped put them on the map for sure. I know there was some issues with them with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. They're based in Ukraine, so I know there was. Yeah, there was a little bit of a mess over there as of recent, but they're definitely one of the world's largest producers of Uroplatus, from what I can tell, and they've been doing it very, very long for a very long time. They definitely are I think they're responsible for pioneering a lot of the care tactics and stuff that we use today. So. Definitely it'll owe a lot to Bion and their care information and the people working there.
That's awesome. That's so cool to have like an organization that was like, hey, we're going to go develop all these care practices for, a lot of species that seem like they need a lot of different. It's not like a Rhacodactylus where, they're all the species are going to be eating the same thing. Or maybe they do for Uroplatus, but like, the care is very similar between all the Rhacodactylus species. Whereas like this, it seems like it's, very varied by the species.
Within their little family groups. So within like the moss mimics, within the leaf mimics, setting them up is pretty consistent.
Gotcha.
It's just, there's some temperature and humidity things you gotta mess with a little bit between species, but they were able to figure out just about everything with Uroplatus, which is pretty cool. I'm sure there were others. Philippe de Vaugelet had some for a while too, back in the day. He was definitely one of the pioneers as well. I'm trying to think. I'm not too brushed up on all the history with them. Those are just the two that stand out, I think. But yeah, no, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's got to be crazy too. Big, like initially figuring that out and like all the different things that you had to try and trying it all on imported animals too. It's not like figuring something out on captive bred animals. That's
right.
Blows my mind.
Yeah. Dude, the importation process, like it's all about hydration, right? Like, especially with these things, they're coming in morbidly dehydrated, right? And then even if you get them stable and rehydrated, there's still like lasting organ damage that happens. And then, obviously fertility is 100% connected to that as well. So breeding success is going to be aggressively thwarted by that. And then one thing about some of the Uroplatus species is that every now and then you'll hear something pop up about like, oh, like I paired these animals and like 3 years down the road have had no success. There are a lot of species that look incredibly similar. even animals kind of brought in under the Uroplatus sequoia name. There is a chance that they're different species. Uroplatus semeti is the most commonly imported one that looks just like sequoia. Supposedly they get a bit bigger, but they are from a different part of the island. They're from a lot farther south. They're from you find them down south on Madagascar, but they look very, very similar. It was reported, or like it was commonly thought that it was the buccal membrane. So you kind of pry the mouth open, you look at what color the mouth is. That was the way you tell them apart. But there's some, I want to say there's some localities. So sequoia historically have had black mouths. Semeti have historically had uncolored buccal membrane, pink mouths. But there are I want to say there's some sequoia with pink mouths that they've found. So it's not a end all be all, which is so great for taxonomy and for kind of figuring out what you're at. But,
that's how it goes.
I was reading, there's this great Uroplatus book, The Complete Uroplatus, or The Complete Leaf Tail. And in there they have detailed diagrams of the hemipenes and the structure of the hemipenes of each species. And looking at Semeti and sequoia, they're actually quite different, even though the animal looks exactly the same, but their reproductive physiology is a little bit different.
That's wild, actually.
Yeah. So which is probably the most obvious reason why they're not breeding. So which kind of makes me feel a little bit at ease that there's probably not a whole lot of hybrids kicking around, but kind of know what you got if it's breeding. But
that's I feel like actually a wild thing to have different reproductive organs within the same genus of animal. You think about even most snakes, you think about vast majority of colubrids. I'm sure that their hemipenes look pretty much the same, you know, and just within a genus have different, that's wild.
They're not insanely different. I don't want to it's not like the difference between monitor versus, snake hemipene, right? It's not that drastic, but there's little minute details. One area could be larger or longer, or have a different texture, or just small changes. And that was one thing that was a aha moment, because just flipping through Facebook and seeing a little bit of the issues some people were having with them. I was like, I wonder if this could be it. Because they got healthy animals and they pair them together, and for whatever reason they just don't work. They're just not compatible. But consistently, captive bred animals tend to get along just fine as far as breeding goes, from what I've seen.
Do you know how many species are produced, not necessarily super available, but are being produced in the U.S.?
Oh, so off the top of my head, I know people that are producing Ebonale, obviously, Sequoia, Lineatus, Fantasticus. Those are, I think, the Fimbriotus as well, so the giant leaf tail. After that, it gets a little hairy. Oh, and then Hankeli as well. That's another one. It looks very similar to Fimbriotus, a little bit smaller. There's a good number of those getting produced too. After that, it becomes a little bit thinner. Species those species include Uroplatus laudi. I know Justin Munsterman from Legacy Herps has been successful getting eggs. I think he's hatched some off the top of my head. I couldn't be sure. I'm pretty sure he has, but don't quote me. And that's it's a smaller Uroplatus species, smaller than Sequoia, kind of a bark mimic, but they have a different structure about them. They just look different. There's one guy in the United States that's breeding Uroplatus peshmani, the cork bark leaf-tail gecko. I'm lucky enough to have a lone male, and I'm desperately searching for a female, and those are insane looking. It looks just like cork bark. Really incredible species.
Because we were saying with the mossies, they don't like the cork bark. They don't sit on it. So do the cork bark ones actually sit on the cork bark?
Yeah, they'll sit on the cork bark all day.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I have his enclosure just kitted out with cork branches.
Nice.
And he's it. Yeah, if you thought mossy leaf tails were good mimics, those things are next level.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
After that, there's, let me think. I think there's still Uroplatus giganteus getting produced in the US. The number is a little larger than Peshmanai, I can imagine, but it's still extremely small. And after that, it's just like reports here and there,
Gotcha.
Old dude in his basement, not sharing anything.
Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Cause you get it. They came in from what I was hearing from somebody that used to have a bunch of corkbark leaf tails, a coworker of mine, he kept them for a while and they just weren't worth anything. Nobody knew what they were either. They were just this weird, nobody could get them to breed. Nobody had figured out how to give them the right egg deposition site. So they were getting a lot of females with egg binding, and they were losing a lot of females that way.
Oh man.
So that was kind of a contributing factor as to how they got kind of wiped out of U.S. herpetoculture, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
I want to say they're still in Europe, but getting them here is damn hard.
Yeah.
So, are any of these CITES listed?
Yeah, damn near all of them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm friends with some people in Canada that are producing some amazing Uroplatus, Sakura and a couple others. But getting those animals into the US would be a nightmare. So
yeah.
They're producing Sakura that are bright green and yellow, and some of them have blue on them. They've got some incredible lines that they've been working with up there, but they can't. It's weird. The Uroplatus hobby up in Canada is very different. It's not as popular. Uroplatus in the United States are becoming more and more popular. People are really interested in them. I think more and more people are getting them, but in Canada, I've heard it's a little bit harder of a sell, unfortunately. But
interesting. I feel like Canada is always into the weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their Fiji Island iguanas that they could
Dude, don't get me started about those.
Yeah. Brenden, when we were at Tinley, we saw those pied Uroplatus. Were those Hankali?
I think so, yeah.
Have you heard about the pied ones?
Yeah. I don't know if it follows true piebaldism, but it's definitely a significant morph, because we've seen it. It always pops up in the same area or in the same regions on the animal. It pops up in the neck, the base of the tail, and on the tail. It's consistent that they get these white bands there, and it's most likely to blend it with patches of lichen, white lichen on trees. It seems to be its own kind of morphotype, but I don't know. I don't think it follows exact Mendelian from what's been bred so far. It seems to be a little bit more of a random chance. Obviously, if you pair two pieds, you'll most likely get pied animals, but it doesn't track exactly.
Maybe more of a polygenic type.
Yeah.
Type transfer.
Super neat looking though. They look cool.
I've got some Sakura that are quote unquote pied as well.
Really?
Yeah, it's present in a couple of moss mimics for sure. But I think it's most striking in Hankali. Some of the Hankali can get damn cool. But
that was sick when we saw those, man. I was like, Tinley was a lot of geckos. There was gecko overload.
Jack was very upset there wasn't a lot of turtles.
Dude,
he went to the gecko show of the US.
Yeah. So, but when we saw those, it was sick.
I'm sure Daytona would be a huge turtle spot.
Oh yeah,
it is.
Yeah. Daytona's
because everybody's keeping them outdoors there in ponds and stuff. It's just you're able to take care of turtles, there in a way you just can't in other places.
They need to be outside, or I mean, just size wise of enclosures, it's hard to do inside for turtles, especially a lot. I mean, all the turtles they've got there, half of them get massive, the Nile soft shells and stuff that you need a 35-foot pond to really take care of properly.
Justice. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
The Chitra, whatever else they've got. I mean, that was the first Daytona I went to. I was drooling at the mouth the entire time, freaking out.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's
so
cool,
before we get to turtles and Zoom Ed and stuff, I have one more question about the Uroplatus stuff, because I know Jack's itching to talk about turtles.
Yes.
I want to talk about the lineatus with the bamboo thicket enclosure that you did.
Yeah.
Like the behaviors and stuff that you noticed.
Yeah. So that's been my latest venture as far as Uroplatus goes, is into the Uroplatus lineatus, the bamboo leaf tails. They're bamboo specialists, so you find them in bamboo groves. But they're interesting in that they're not, from looking at them, you wouldn't think that they would be the greatest bamboo mimic. I don't think. With the mossies, it's an obvious, connection with branches and blending in with bark. With Ebinawa and Fantasticus, it's obvious that they're designed to blend in with dead leaves. But Lineatus, they're a little bit different structure. They're in their own separate little kind of clade of Uroplatus. And kind of setting up their enclosure, I knew that I wanted to include bamboo. So, I went to Lowe's and I got those kind of like 1 to 2 inch diameter bamboo poles, kind of set them up in there. But we have this bird of paradise plant out in our front yard, and it's massive, and it's constantly dropping like big old dead fronds. So I got this from when I was doing cresteds. I'm still doing cresteds, but like I picked this up from trying it with cresteds, is I'd like chop those up into little like kind of like a 8x12 sections, and I'd kind of like stick those in the enclosure. The cresteds would love to kind of hide in the furrows. And I was thinking like, man, like this decaying like bird of paradise plant kind of matches the Lineatus's pattern really, really well. I stuck it in there, and like clockwork, those things kind of climbed up into the bird of paradise plants. So I'm like, all right, I know what I got to provide now. So I made sure in the big Uroplatus Lineatus build to include bird of paradise fronds, kind of coating the bottom. I also have a few kind of crammed into the corners of the enclosure, and they're in there constantly. But they're bamboo mimics. Everybody, you find them in bamboo thickets. So like, all right, got to do the bamboo. So I did the 1/2 inch or did the 1 to 2 inch bamboo, but I also shoved in a bunch of kind of smaller diameter bamboo that I kind of just cut from a plant up front too.
Yeah.
And created like a thicket almost. And then after doing that, I came home one day and I could not find my damn gecko. I was like, where is this thing? I'm checking all bird of paradise fronds. I'm checking around the bamboo poles because they will rest on them, but it's pretty obvious where they are. And then like right in front of me, it just hit me. There's this freaking gecko just like chilling with his, each like foot was connected to like a different branch of bamboo. And it was just like cool, strung vertically in this thicket, like a dead, like bird of paradise, frond, or like a dead bamboo leaf frond. And then, you look at the tail, that's a drop tail, but look how similar that thing looks to like a drying bamboo leaf, the way it curls, the way it's shaped, like, man, like that is exactly the same. So it was kind of like an aha moment there. We're like, man, yeah. So these things are kind of designed for kind of blending in with the bamboo leaves as well.
I need these, I think.
We're converting them one episode at a time.
One episode at a time. They're awesome, dude.
I'm looking at like the other screen, like watching this actually happen. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
They're awesome, man.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
And when they hatch out, their tails, their original tails, they look a lot like a decaying bird of paradise plant. That species of that family of plant is commonly found in Madagascar from what I've seen. So I think that it is like, that is actually what they're designed for. But
really,
they're definitely also found. I think I want to say it's just like 2 species of plants that are just commonly found in the same areas. The bird of paradise plants and the bamboo thickets. So I think there's a little bit of overlap in ability to camouflage there. There's some pictures of on iNaturalist too of these things in bird of paradise fronds as well. So I think that was definitely important to include the decaying leaves is where they get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of try and disappear into.
Look at that thing climbing, man. That is so cool.
It is, dude. They're so cat-like. It's like these big spindly arms and big old eyes. Their eyes turn blood red as well.
That's awesome. So is this the 3 foot wide?
Yeah, so it's a 3 by 18 by 3.
Okay, that's an awesome size enclosure.
In there. And,
so cool, man.
I think I could just watch this on repeat.
Dude, they move so. I have nothing else to compare it to. They move so similar to cat geckos. It's kind of crazy.
the XL cat.
Yeah,
they
have
like
the same kind of like movement, man. It's kind of crazy. God, they're so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, the enclosure you've set up too there is awesome. I feel like the more I look at it, like the white poly walls like almost just make everything like look like it just keeps going. Almost like it looks like not closed in. It looks like open and wide and bright.
Right. No, so like it reflects the light really well, and it kind of it definitely helps kind of keep the enclosures kind of less cave like. Which for my viewing pleasure, I love. So really happy with them. But the Lineots they're so cool.
They're so cool. We've talked about the white enclosures because Brendan's got some white PVC enclosures, and we go back and forth because it's like, especially with snakes when they're pooping in there, that's causing staining issues and all kinds of stuff so like that. Bad. But the white has so many benefits just for viewing. It's like
poop doesn't come off polywall all that well. I'm gonna be honest. Definitely gotta get in there with a heavy duty brush and get that stuff off. But thankfully, the Uroplatus are pretty good about just crapping on the glass. So in the fronts. So.
Are they? Is it like the white kind of poop that like a normal like crested gecko kind of?
Yeah, it looks exactly the same.
We're on a Instagram deep dive now here, and these are insane.
Dude, they are the coolest, man. I need some. I really do.
You have no idea. They're like little frogs almost.
Yeah,
leaf frogs.
Yeah, they're so cool.
So that's that yellow one that you were talking about?
Yeah, you can see that yellow one.
Okay.
The nice thing about those two is you can always find them in the enclosure. They're always just perched on a branch or in a.
So cool, man. I didn't think I needed Uroplatus, but there you are.
Dude, like the M&I is so great. Just like everybody worries about kind of keeping Uroplatus cold. They don't want to deal with the humidity. It's like the obvious choice, It's almost better for them to be able to get a little bit drier and get a little bit hotter during the day. So
see, I need I have nothing in this. So we built our basement last year, and as you can see, there's no cages anywhere in the living room. Yeah, and I need something like right here, and I think they would be perfect.
I think they would be perfect too. You go out there with a little headlamp, and it'll be super active. And
all I have to do is show them to the girlfriend, and she'll be down. So
totally.
We've got another thing we got to talk about before we go.
Yeah, man, I forgot about these.
These jungle
This is
vines.
so cool, dude.
There's your face. I wish Ken. So can you kind of explain what these are and I know you do it in the video, but
so those are quote unquote jungle vines that I sourced from a good old beach in California. So I was recently getting my girlfriend into reptiles. I got her a leopard gecko, stoked on it, and then she wants a crested gecko. So we were working on that, and we were out on like a little beach date or whatever, and we were walking around, and then she starts picking up like these branches. I'm like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting them from my enclosure." I'm like, "You can't pick these things up. It's like seaweed. Like you're not gonna want to use these." And then I come over and I take a closer look. I'm like, "Huh." The wheels start turning. I'm like, huh, like the way these are shaped, it's almost like those curly branches that you see kind of wrapping around. Like, it's like, I'm scratching my head going, well, maybe they're too pliable. They're still waterlogged. There's weird stuff growing on them, but I'm picking them up and they're like super light. They're really dry. They've been baking in the sun all this time. So they're kind of cured at this point. And I'm like, huh. It starts turning, and then I took some home. I sprayed them off, let them kind of spit all the salt, or what maybe was salt. I'm not too sure because these things looked like they were out on the beach for a while. But kind of sprayed them off, let them kind of cook in the sun for a little longer, just on my pavement, and then chucked them in, and it's cool. Like I see the cresteds perching on those at night, and it definitely kind of elevates the look too.
Yeah,
and if
man,
you
it
can
looks
get them,
good.
they're like a little bit pliable. They're not super quick to snap sometimes. So with the thinner ones, you can kind of get them to work around larger branches and kind of really create that vine look. But I don't really like the ones that are like the same curl kind of constantly. It's like a consistent corkscrew. It almost looks unnatural. Like I know it's a real vine, right? But it's like so uniform that it's like it kind of throws me off a little bit. But these, it's like they're going all which way, and just as like an accent, I think it looks really cool.
Yeah.
And what a random find too, just like walking.
So random. And then suddenly it's like, wow, like these enclosures next level. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, those are really cool.
Chucking those in tanks and stuff.
Yeah. And it's free and you can just go get it.
And it's free.
Best part.
Those, like finding something like that, you have to go buy it, and wood, getting it shipped, it's just like a whole mess. So
yeah. One thing with the Uroplatus is that you definitely got to do some wood finding excursions. A lot of the commonly sold stuff isn't all that great. They don't. The Mossies don't like the cork because it's too rough for their poor little feet. Deb and I, they like the thin little branches and the freaking Lineatus. They need bamboo, and then you can't find bamboo in pet stores. So
yeah,
you gotta be a little creative with these things. So
that's the name of the game, man.
Yes, sir.
Gotta be.
But, all right, Jack. You want to talk turtles?
All right, is it turtle hour now?
It's turtle time.
We talked enough about leaf tails to.
Yeah, everyone's.
I guess we can talk about turtles.
So I guess first of all, are you keeping any turtles in your own personal collection, or is your work?
I am not. Working with turtles 9 to 5 is plenty for me. Yeah. No. Okay. I love turtles, and eventually, I just want to do them the service of keeping them, in a pond. Like I don't think I would really want to try and keep them indoors per se. Like I think watching them kind of do their natural behaviors outdoors in a pond that would really tickle me one day. And I think I will get there. And I have one species in mind already that I 100% will get one day. But yeah, we can talk on that
after. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So with your work with them at ZooMed, or is there a particular species that you've got there that is kind of your favorite? And like, there's a ton there, I'm sure, as far as number of species, but just about that. And
I've definitely got a favorite turtle and a favorite tortoise. So yeah, I guess answering that question previously, the turtle I would 100% take in a heartbeat. Would be the spotted turtles. I think those are the coolest. Like and they stay small, so it's easy to provide a nice large enclosure for them. They're really cold tolerant. You can have them burmate, and they're a gorgeous turtle. They got these yellow spots. It looks like a night sky. Big orange peachy throat. Super cool. Really easy to feed. We kind of just use like our tortoise or turtle pellets for them, and we supplement with like canned krill and some other insects and whatnot, and they go crazy for them. And I can't think of a better turtle for like keeping, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I think, one of the best pet species you could have, and obviously there's a lot of like legality issues with them, especially on the East Coast, where they're native, and obviously for good reason. They're super protected, and they should be.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I'm not sad I can't have them here. Because I would love to do them. Do you follow Charlie Moorcroft on Instagram?
I don't. I think I've heard the name though.
Yeah, he's got this awesome spotted turtle enclosure. It's basically this huge, like, screened in outdoor, like peat swamp, essentially, that is just fully planted up. And I think he's got like 12 spotted turtles in this massive, huge enclosure, and they just like crank out babies for him.
Yeah.
But that would be how I would do it for sure. It's just like this huge, like, swamp, basically. And that's where, like, so I found them in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, and they were like hanging out on the margins, like on floating plants, just basking. So they weren't even basking out of the water, just the shell, and it was so cool. They're awesome, man. Definitely.
We keep them in like the shallow waterland tubs, and they get about, we only keep them in about like kind of 4 inches of water, deepest part. So So a lot of the times they're like really easily able to climb up onto a little piece of cork in the water and sun, and then kind of drop back in. They're never really like swimming down, if that makes sense. They're kind of always have like 1 foot on the bottom, kind of looking out the top. They seem to really enjoy that. They're always kind of cruising around, and they're a really active turtle. What I've noticed is that they're not, the name of the game for them is not just to like hide all day, bask, and then go back to hiding like something like a map turtle. They're always cruising around, kind of doing their thing. So it's a really entertaining turtle as well.
Yeah, and beautiful to look at too. So
100%.
Ticks all the boxes.
It really does, yeah.
So what's the tortoise then?
100% the pancakes. The pancake tortoises
nice.
are so damn cool, man.
It's
another smaller kind of species of tortoise, but really unique. They have these crazy velvety shells, kind of lets them cram into rock crevices and cracks and whatnot. And they're a tortoise that they get along with each other pretty well. I think in the wild they'll find them in like these, I don't know about family groups, but they'll find them in kind of living in close proximity to one another in these rock outcroppings. And as far as the tortoise goes, like they're super personable. They cruise out of their little dens every now and then, and they'll kind of cruise around and go shove themselves back in the cracks to kind of cool down, then come back out to heat up. And they're incredible.
I've heard they've got a weird, like very specific pungent smell to them. Have you noticed that about them?
I haven't.
Okay.
So if it's the feces, then that stuff is drying out pretty rapidly. So I don't really get a chance to go down and get a whiff of it. But dude, the box turtles, those are pungent. That if you want to talk about a pungent turtle, that I don't know about the pancakes, but those box turtles, man.
Yeah,
stinky. Those things can get. So we keep those.
My wood turtles are the same. They're the North American wood turtles. They're very smelly creatures for sure.
I
think it's their diet because it's like they're eating a lot of meat and stuff. And
they're omnivorous, right? So it's that protein.
Yeah,
we keep them in waterland tubs with like a continuous, water kind of going in and overflowing. So they're constantly getting fresh water, and without that, it's a mission to kind of try and keep those things clean.
Yeah. I've only got one box turtle, and it's got a pond with a filter and everything on it, so it's big enough that it doesn't smell, and it's outdoors too, so that's good. But
that's a plus.
Yeah, it always helps. Okay, so the pancakes and the spotteds. Is there I don't know if you're good to talk about it, but how many species do you guys keep at ZoomEd, and is it kind of broad ranging between tortoises and turtles? And
so I'd say most predominantly we keep various species of turtles and tortoises. A couple of the tortoises I can list off the top of my head. We got a bunch of groups of pancake tortoises. I think we're working with 3 or 4 separate bloodlines, which is cool.
Wow.
We also keep a bunch of forest tortoises.
Nice.
It's like a kind of Southeast Asian species, island Sulawesi. So it's more of a tropical tortoise species. They're really awesome. However, they hate each other with like a burning passion.
Really?
So we gotta keep them all separate.
Even males and females?
Yeah.
Really?
Wow. They're a solitary tortoise if I've ever seen one.
Okay.
Interesting.
We also keep elongateds, which are very similar looking. Got a group of Russians too. And we also got some Burmese star tortoises. Those are
nice.
Those are incredible too. Cool. We had a little baby hatch recently, and that was incredible.
That's awesome. I definitely want to get Indian star tortoises eventually. They're up there just because the smaller size and everything too compared to the Burmese. But the Burmese star tortoises, man, all the star tortoises are they're awesome.
Gorgeous.
Yeah,
that was cool because one of my coworkers, he's got a group of Indian stars as well, and he always brings in the eggs for us to incubate because you got to diapause them, and so it's a little in depth, so he kind of just has us do it. We had an Indian and a Burmese hatch out at the same time.
Wow.
The Indian star is so much pinker. It's really cool. It's like the salmon pink when they hatch out. It's pretty crazy. And then the Burmese stars are a little more yellow out the egg.
Because the Burmese stars, when they're full grown, they're more like solid color than like as I don't know what like as starred, I guess would be. But they're right. They get more of like a solid color. They still have the stars going on, but it's like more solid color. Yeah.
Yeah. The female the animals that we have, there's a lot of black on them.
Okay.
Thin stripes of yellow poking through. The Indians can get damn gorgeous as well.
Yeah. All of those, man. I always say, because obviously with radiated tortoises being ESA listed, they're really hard to get if you don't know somebody in the state breeding them. So the star tortoises being not listed is nice, because then you're able to get them. So
absolutely, it's definitely, they're definitely attainable these days. Just cool to see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As for turtles goes, we obviously got the spotteds. Whole plethora of box turtles, Easterns, three toes, Gulf Coasts,
nice,
and Floridas as well. Those are the species of box turtles we work with. Map turtles, got some Barber's map turtles,
nice,
black knobs.
Map turtles are one of those things too. They're like I think that they're about to get ESA listed, but because they're so similar, they're like listing a bunch of species all at once. So it's like, people need to get them before they do.
Can. Yeah, we got ring maps, and that was a process.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So
those are awesome.
Yeah.
That's another species, man.
Every
species
incredible.
All the map turtles are just like even the common ones, like the Northerns and the Mississippi maps, are like, they're just insane to look at with like all the patterning and stuff that they've got going on. I just feel like they would be more common than they are. I guess the Mississippi maps now are kind of the new radiated slider, but that's awesome.
And then I think going off that, European ponds,
nice.
Kind of going down like the row of tubs that we have.
Yeah.
Like, one by one, I'm like, all right, who's in this? So those, we got some diamondback terrapins, yellow blotch maps.
Nice.
Pink belly sliders. Those things breed like crazy. Oh my gosh. It's starting to become pink belly season. We're getting overrun again.
Yep.
With little pink belly babies. They hatch out so adorable though. It's hard to feel like you can't have too many.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful turtle too. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
One
we've been painstakingly attempting to breed has been another personal favorite of mine has been the spike-necked turtles. It's like a South American turtle. They get about
tuberculosa or yeah. Okay, gotcha.
They're the black spike-necked turtles, I think.
Okay,
they go by. Or spine-necked. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Those have been a process. I've been trying to do some research on those into the natural history, and I want to try and kind of simulate like a rainy season for them. I want to kind of get consistent at kind of spraying their tub down. And we've got overhead sprayers and stuff too that kind of kick on when it gets too hot, which is kind of cool. But specifically on those, I definitely want to try a little bit of like a flooding period for them. And that's something that this year I've been trying to implement with we also got a colony of twist neck turtles.
Nice. Yeah.
And trying to breed those has actually been kind of difficult so far.
Yeah.
We've got them established in like a pen in our greenhouse, but haven't been too successful breeding them just yet. We got eggs, but I don't think they were fertile. So right now we're in the process of kind of simulating like a rainy season, and we're spraying that enclosure down every day, kind of flooding it, which is kind of cool. When you spray them down, it kind of wakes them all up and kind of gets them all to kind of walk into the water receptacle we have in there in the little pond, and then we'll see some breeding action happening inside the water. Like, okay,
that's awesome.
Maybe we're on something here about
I feel like all those Amazon turtles, like especially the ones that are more land dwelling, they probably go through this whole cycle of the flooding and is significant in their breeding. Do you follow? There's a guy Zucon something on Instagram. I can't remember. I'll have to send you his page.
Yeah.
But he breeds twist necks, and he gave a presentation at the TTPG like last year, I think.
Okay.
On
it.
but yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite species. I've been talking to Brenden about those like nonstop.
Dude, they're
for a
so
while.
personable.
Yeah.
I know there's an account. I think his name is, oh my gosh, what was Turtles and Geckos. I know he's he's produced them too. I'm blanking on his name right now. But yeah, that's another guy I've reached out to about kind of bouncing some ideas off of him. Trying to see what works. So yeah, I think a lot of the South American stuff is definitely based on rain.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's tied to like the availability of like good nesting sites as well. And you know, if they're kind of all like the males and females are kind of distributed, right? And I feel like the rains kind of bring them out into like a central location too. It kind of
interesting. Okay.
I think that is in my head that kind of makes sense as to why they're so tied to rain, is because that as far as the twist necks goes, like it's a species that a lot of the day they spend their day, you know, just crammed under leaf litter, kind of not really moving a whole lot. They know when it's feeding time, so around feeding time they're always perusing, but as far as like during like the daylight hours, they're usually hiding under leaf litter. But as soon as those rains come down, as soon as I'm spraying them, they all kind of wake up and shoot towards the water, and then that's when, you know, they start to get active and start to breed.
That's interesting.
And they'll do it right then and there.
I was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember what it was now, but and I can't remember the species either, but it was similar to a twist neck in the fact that it's relatively terrestrial, but then has a relationship to water in some capacity. But he was talking about breeding them, and the first time he had success was when he put them in another pond for like holding shortly, and it was like a deeper pond, and it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to be in deeper water generally, but like the actual like physical maneuvering of the male mounting the female was like helped them actually, you know, do the act of breeding.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, funny little story about that is that we've been trying to get, we have a little group of chicken turtles as well. We've been trying to get these chicken turtles to breed. Previously we were keeping in a more shallow enclosure. As soon as we bumped them up to a bigger tub, we got eggs, and we're like, man, it makes sense. That male physically can't climb onto the female's back in this show. You know, it needs the help of the water weight and the buoyancy to kind of mount the female. So that was a kind of a funny aha moment.
Yeah. Are those Westerns or Easterns or?
Ooh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Gotcha. I love chicken turtles.
Pictures.
Yeah, please do.
Big long necks and
So I just had to Google chicken turtle because I have no idea what you guys are talking about, and they are pretty cool looking.
They're cool, man. we were out herping in Francis Marion 2 weekends ago, and huge chicken turtle population there. But you know, it's in these like specific ponds that are like isolated and shallower. Tons of like pine needles, like super acidic water. And so we had this running joke that we were like, oh, it's chicken turtle habitat. Because whenever it was like not suitable to everything else, we were like, oh, it's chicken turtle
chicken
habitat.
turtles.
Yeah. Never saw one, unfortunately, but that's a huge target species of mine to go see soon. So
yeah,
I love them, man.
They're awesome. Yeah, we got them in a big old waterland tub with a like a metal cage, not a metal cage, but like a metal barred cage with like a bunch of kind of plastic wrapped wire. You can picture that. With like I think it's a 1.2 of Chinese water dragons out there.
Oh wow!
Oh nice.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
a
pretty cool enclosure we were able to put together this past year.
That's awesome. That's another species too that like kind of fell off once they stopped getting imported as much as they did, but like I feel like was never appreciated when they were imported, and now it's like they're cool, man. Like they're cool.
Awesome, man. They're awesome. I think, man, getting them outside and into that enclosure, the relationship with water is like, it's pretty obvious. It's hard to do in an enclosure inside. Honestly, we'll walk out there sometimes. They're not necessarily skittish, but if you go to try and pick them up, they know where the water is. They'll dive bomb and like kind of get out of there. So watching that's pretty cool. We'll find them in the water as well, kind of just chilling, kind of half. We have like these kind of like 1x4s, 1x8s is like basking platforms also in the waterland tub, so they can get out onto the sand in that little section of the waterland tub, but they can also get out and bask. And we'll see like the water dragons half in, half out of the water all the time in the sun.
So cool. So this is all in the greenhouse, right?
Yeah, all in the greenhouse, pretty much.
So is it for everyone's probably seen the Zoom Ed greenhouse. It's pretty famous. I remember the old Reptiles magazine article about it, and just seeing all the pictures, I was obsessed. But
the Camp Kennan video, I think I grew up on that video.
Yeah, I've probably watched that thing like 20 times. Yeah, But so in the greenhouse, is it like is UVB and UVA like able to penetrate through the panels and everything? Okay.
Yeah, so we have like this row of special acrylic panels along one side of the greenhouse. That is, it lets UVA and UVB penetrate, which is pretty awesome. That's definitely something it's important that we did that, just for the sake of the animals, right? Don't want to get, have any issues, complications with MBD out there. Which it's a consistent problem with other greenhouses is just not being able to provide that and having to do it supplementally. But we've been able to, I obviously wasn't around when the greenhouse was constructed. So there's definitely a lot of little care and kind of technology things that I'm still, I'm not the most well-versed on just yet. But yeah, I guess it was like a hard process sourcing those panels. It was pretty awesome find.
Yeah. I feel like everything you see too is like plastic and glass filters it out. And I know that there's like specialized glass and specialized plastic that can let it through, but it seems to be not easy to find, as you're saying as well. So
yeah. But it's cool because we kind of positioned the greenhouse when it was built. The greenhouse was positioned in a way that as the sun the sun starts on one end and kind of transitions over it and then across it. And then that row of UVA and UVB penetrating panels is on one side. So in the morning, it'll actually it'll get like this sunspot that kind of travels from one end of the greenhouse to the other throughout the day.
That's cool.
And different animals will kind of come out and bask during those different times.
That's awesome. So interesting to see how they've adapted their behavior to the environment that they're given. Totally. That's awesome.
And then between the hours of 12 and 3, we also close the greenhouse completely to anybody. Nobody's allowed to go in there. Locked up just to let the turtles bask. That's really important, especially with the stuff like the maps. Not the boldest turtle. So letting them have their time to bask kind of freely and not get disturbed and having to shoot back into the water. That's definitely something that was good to do and good to implement.
Turtles, and so most of my turtles are in my reptile room, so I'm only in there, unless I'm doing work, which on the weekends I'll be in there for hours. But like on a normal day, I'm only in there like maybe an hour or 2 hours a day. So the ones down there don't have that kind of basking predation fear kind of thing. But like I've got a tank in my bedroom that I've got some Podocnemus uniphilus, the yellow spotted, which are awesome. But when I first got them, they were super shy about basking. So I had to build like it's basically just like a fish tank hood on top, but it's got a basking platform inside so that it's opaque on all sides, so they're not seeing me when they're basking. And it has helped a ton because now they're basking all the time. And previously they would only, they'd come up and bask, and I work at home, so I'm in the room. And so I'd stand up and everyone would shoot in the water. I'm like, this cannot be good for you guys. Like you're not getting your daily sun. So that's super important to get them their space and time. Shell rot's definitely a lingering issue if they're constantly in the water. So I was worst.
I was not, I never really kept turtles growing up or anything. So I only really ever kind of started working with turtles in the the last year and a half that I've been working at Zoom Ed. So all these different care care things has been really cool to pick up. Kind of learn about. But the shell rot seems to be a huge issue in map turtles in cases where they don't kind of have their basking time. So they're the most sensitive, I've heard, for sure. The shell rot's like, I mean, everyone when they first start keeping turtles is going to experience shell rot. It's like an inevitable thing, especially as you like hone your care and stuff. But it's like there's like small things that in the aggregate allow you to kind of like
like if like aeration in the water is huge for some reason, and then basking, making sure that they're getting the proper basking temps and just clean water generally. But like all these little things that you don't think about necessarily when you first start. And now that you like, I've kind of made sure that these things are in place now, and I haven't had shell rot on anything in 2 or 3 years, which has been great. So
yeah, it's gotta feel good.
Yeah. It's cool seeing like, you know, the small things and knowing that that's exactly what you need to do in order to avoid it. So, but yeah, I've got some imported South American wood turtles, the Rhacodactylus punctularia, and they came in with some pretty significant shell rot as most of those imports do. And so treating that, it brought me back. I was like, oh, I hate this, you know, going through the iodine treatment and the dry docking and it's awful. And that can be super pervasive too. Like it, you know, as soon as it gets into the bones, it's like, you're not gonna,
it can't do much once it gets deep enough. So
you
gotta stay on top of that stuff for sure. We're constantly out there checking turtles and stuff and just doing body checks because it's separated from where we a lot of the employees are kind of in the main offices in the main facility where we have like our showroom and our animal room where we kind of keep a lot of the baby turtles and stuff. But that greenhouse is it's kind of off to the side of the facility, so it's definitely like a conscious, consistent effort, just making sure everybody's kind of dialed in, and because that stuff can creep up if you're not careful.
Yeah, and getting it early makes all the difference.
Right, and like something as simple as like algae growing on a shell can kind of almost create like a water sponge on the shell and just create that surface that harbors that bacteria, and that stuff like that can definitely creep up. Yeah.
Do you, and we'll have to cut this at some point because I could go all night for the rest of the night talking about these. But I saw your post on ZooMed's page about the Savannah.
The Savannah Podocnemus vogeli.
Yeah. So what other species of Podocnemus do you guys have?
That's the only one we keep currently. I know in years past we have had other species. I'm not too sure on the history of that. There's a whole plethora of species that we used to keep and don't have anymore. I'm like, God darn it, if only I was here for that. But so currently we just keep the Savannahs. Oh my gosh, what a turtle. First of all, they're massive. They're like the size of a dinner platter. Some of those females, oh my goodness, like it's easily like the largest aquatic turtle that we keep. Or semi-aquatic turtle that we keep. And then that sand area, we bake that to like a surface temp in the hundreds. The females, they'll use that for egg deposition. They really seem to like it. You look up videos, it's like the same family of turtle that you see in those videos of where there's like thousands on this one beach. It's kind of cool.
And you're talking about how big they are too, like the giant ones. Thinking about those in the same
even
family.
Bigger. Vogeli isn't even the biggest in the family, right? So,
crazy. That whole family is like my favorite. Now keeping these yellow spotted river turtles, like they're my favorite turtle by far. And I have a lot of cool turtles. So every time I get to, they're in my bedroom, so I get to look at them all the time. And I'm like, I can't wait for you guys to be,
huge,
14, 15 inches. Yeah. So, but no, the Vogeli are super cool. So are you guys, are they pretty, like, are they eating mostly plants as well? Or are they?
Yeah. So with a lot of the tortoises and stuff, we'll mix in, we kind of base a lot of our feeding off of our like pelleted diets. And we'll supplement it with leafy greens, fruits, insects, canned insects and whatnot. And we'll kind of create diets for each species, but we'll kind of go through with like the leftover leafy greens and kind of drop them in select turtle tubs, Vogeli being one. And kind of let them graze on that stuff, and they go crazy for it. Whenever we have like leftover kind of insects or kind of pellets from the like the morning feeding round, that's who we turn to as a Vogeli. They're never afraid to eat, that's for sure.
The dumpsters for sure. I get that. Okay, so and honestly, the ZooMed turtle diet is the only pellet food that I use for my turtles. I just feel like it's the best one on the market, and I feel like especially the way you guys do it with like, the different side, like, so for the hatchling diet being a different formula from the, the medium size, like the growth formula, and then the adult maintenance formula. I just feel like a lot of the other diets are the same, just in different sizes. And I think it's super important to acknowledge the fact that turtles, based on the size, are eating different things.
Exactly.
And it's my favorite diet. And I've grown a lot of turtles on that diet specifically, and had, a lot of people talk about pellets being a main food item. And I agree, you got to supplement with a lot of different things, but like the Zoo Med pellet diet, I've felt like has grown turtles the best out of any, other diet out there. So
yeah, the owner is, most, he's his biggest passion is turtles and tortoises. A lot of the people in the reptile room are we're lizard people at the end of the day. But he is a big, turtle and tortoise hobbyist. Always has been. It's really what gets his gears turning, and he's really passionate about it. So I think establishing that early on was a big thing for him. So, and I obviously was not around when that diet was getting formulated, but we still use that stuff to this day. Growing a lot of baby turtles up on that stuff, and had a lot of success.
I think pellets also get like a bad rep because of a few key players out there that can remain unnamed, but they're I feel like a lot of times very protein based, and so they don't, for things like less so sliders, but like a cooter or the Podocnemus or things like that, where they're eating a lot of vegetable matter. It's not a great diet, and that's why I like the Zoo Med one, because especially with the maintenance one, I think it's like 30-something% protein, which is a lot. I mean, the normal is somewhere over 40%. So
right. Yeah, we separated between growth and maintenance, and also got the mud turtle one, or the musk turtle one, the sinking stuff. And then the hatchling. So it's great, man. I love it.
Good to hear. Awesome. All right. Well, we're at 2.5 hours here. We should probably cut it. We'll have to touch back with you at some point for sure.
Absolutely.
Catch up with you on everything, and I'm sure you're gonna have new DIY ideas and of course inventions. So we'll have to touch back with you on that.
The season's been good for Sakura and Ebanawi so far. The Lineatus, recent acquisition, so it's still going to take some time figuring those things out, but I'm hopeful for next year. So hopefully, in the future we'll get to yam about those a little bit more.
Hell yeah, man.
Hope I sold some folks on Sakura and Ebanawi. At least I think they're an awesome beginner Uroplatus.
You got me
You've kept crested geckos, you've kept the basics, you know how to keep reptiles, you can do these no problem. So
yeah, I'm in, man. I'm so in. Unfortunately for my wallet. So
we found Jack's gecko kryptonite.
Yeah, that's it. That's it, man. Damn.
Love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jack, is there anywhere that you would like people to follow you and drop your links and all that?
Yeah. So I do most of my posting on my Instagram account at GekkotaCulture. So it's GekkotaCulture. So kind of like herpetoculture, but Gekkota. And then I also kind of have like this side account, Gekkota Macro, where I chuck up a bunch of kind of DSLR photos I've taken herping and of my animals and stuff. So I don't really promote that as often, but I've definitely gotten a kick out of getting into photography as of recent. So I guess those are the two that I'll be most active on.
Awesome. All right. And we'll have all those links down in the show notes as well. So if you guys want to go check out Jack, which you absolutely should, because we did a little bit of an Instagram dive, but there's some gems on there. So I would definitely recommend everyone going out and checking out his page. And then for us, we'll be back next week, next Friday, with a boys only episode. We'll catch up on everything there. And then 2 weeks after that, we got a really exciting guest for more turtle talk. So,
boy,
we should have
there you go.
turtle packed episode for that one. So I'm super excited on that. So
I got to brush up on my turtles for that one.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna need you to be an expert by the time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. Well, guys, follow the Instagram, Beyond the Terrarium, and then Brenden is BM Exotics, and I'm Jack Oliver _reptiles, which will at some point be some sort of brand, but we'll see. But with that, we'll see you guys next week. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. So see you then.
See ya.